AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007, and since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions.
Hi, and welcome everybody to our gun question show, which is a special edition today because we don't have a Clover. So we're going to try a book quiz. So we got Tony Simon joining us from New Jersey. I'm assuming you're in New Jersey. Thanks for jumping in.
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, I'm here until either that lottery win comes through or I retire.
Right on. So, I just didn't want to do a show because Clover's not going to be able to be here today. I didn't want to do a regular show and have them miss all the fun. So I figured I'd try to do something a little different. We would try a 2A book quiz. We do this show live. We're not just doing it to do it. We do it to create awareness and to get people motivated and give them something to do on a Saturday. So we'll see who all joins us. We're starting a little bit late here today for reasons, but I appreciate everybody who does join in. Participate in the live part of the show. Right now it's just Woods and maybe somebody else. Maybe it's just us looking at it, but we'll see if anybody else joins us today, and we'll see if we can't have a quiz going. Let's see. When I say Second Amendment books, what books come to mind for Tony?
Like this nonviolent stuff will get you killed. That's one of the books I've read. I can't think of who the names of it is, but yeah, stuff like that. Things that gives you the history of it. That helps with me and what I talk about, my angle at it. So that's what I look at as my second, well, one form of Second Amendment books. The other is stuff on the gun culture itself, different firearms. You know what I'm saying? Like I have like a book on just hunting with handguns. And it talks about everything from using Thompson centers to using revolvers to even using Desert Eagles to hunt. And it goes into explaining how it works. So I think it all has a place. And then, of course, you get into the ones with, to me, it's anything to do with firearms and promoting firearms as a sport for safety or even as training. That's what it all falls under to me.
Right on. So there's a ton of them. I think I started getting into them. I probably started collecting one or two books that were, let's say, Second Amendment as opposed to just gun books. Probably somewhere during YouTube time. I'm trying to think if I had anything before. I might have picked something up at a gun show or something because the JPFO, just the Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership organization since about 75. No, is it that old? No, it's whatever. It's pretty old. One of the oldest ones. And their thing has always just been awareness, really. It started back a long time ago. Aaron Zellman, rabbi here in Tucson, started it. And he's old enough to have, I don't know if he personally necessarily, because I don't know his story, but he's old enough that his parents for sure were the generation that would have been in those camps. So they, he had as a rabbi had a relationship with the Second Amendment that's a little different than a normal person, I suppose. That's not thinking about all that history of the World War II and the disarmament and the what is that, the I'm trying to think of slaughter, the word for that, but so that's a thing, that's a sort of a phenomenon, how the Jews after World War II that came to the United States started to vote Democrat. And even though the Democrats are anti-gun, it's one of those weird situations that the Democrats, what's the word? They capitalize on, or they profit from that because it's really not to anybody's best interest to let the state own the monopoly on violence. And anyway, so Aaron Zellman's focus when the organization first started was that, I'm assuming, an awareness to everybody, but specifically to the Jews that either did, were old enough to have lived through that era, or were the descendants of that generation who had it kind of fresh in their mind that disarmament equals what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word for when you kill a whole bunch of people that I can't think of. You know what I mean? There's
You mean genocide?
genocide. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word for that reason. But yeah, like that concept was something that was frustrating. Must have been very frustrating for people who were paying attention when all the other people were not paying attention. Which is their right to just not pay attention. But so I don't know if you know some of the original JPFO booklets and pamphlets from the old gun shows back in the day.
No, I didn't actually go to gun shows back in the day. Mainly because I was too young until I left home, and then I didn't get back until the '90s. Yeah, because I was out of the country and out of touch for about 3 years, from 17 to 21.
Yeah, I got you. They were kind of like brochures, a lot like the kind of things you see from religious. I don't know the different religions that leave the little things kind of around, not just in hotels, but that'll just leave them in public areas, bus stations, and restaurants and stuff. So it's almost that type of thing, like a booklet made out of newspaper material. And that's the Hey Jack series, and it was essentially a guy's grandpa telling a little kid lessons, that you would get from your grandpa type of stuff. Like, hey kid, you don't know about this, but this is important. And it was mostly, it was all gun related and, reasons. And it was in a cartoon format. And, the M16 comic book that they made during
Yeah.
World War or during Vietnam to teach the people. It was like that. It was
Okay.
that realm, I think. So it was something that you could, I think the intention was for people to buy a bunch of them, maybe a gun shop or somebody that was just interested, and then buy a bunch of them and then hand them out at gun shows. So that's where my first experience might have been. And since I'm cheap, I would grab something for free because why not? And then probably started to get some idea that not everybody's satisfied with the laws. And for me, at least, when they made the assault weapon or the Gun Owners Protection Act in '86, that's when I started to question, hey, wait a minute. These laws aren't all for our benefit. Like some of these are dumbass and this one is stupid. Because, I was a young and probably, in high school already, with my eyes on what I'm going to be making into a machine gun when I could get old enough. And then they, just like drinking, they changed the drinking age from 18 to 21 right before I got there. And they changed the stupid Gun Owners Protection Act to machine gun thing right before I got of age to be able to do anything about it. So that was frustrating for me. And trying to think if I saw any books because of that. There might have been some angry pamphlets or something, but nothing that was useful other than angry. Nothing that was like, here's what you can do to prevent this, or here's what we can do to challenge this, or anything like that. Obviously, we still have the Gun Owners Protection Act, or at least the Hughes Amendment part of it. All right, so I'm going to go to the audience. We talk about the audience being part of the show. This is a pile of them that I've got here. I can't say I've read them all. This is Shannon Watt's book. I got that as a joke, or somebody gave that to me as a joke sort of thing. This one was given to me by Professor Yamane, which is another I think, book, I would call it. Merchants of the Right. But the other ones are 2A. So we got Guns Order from Mike Deddy. We got Neil Knox's book, The Gun Rights War. I have both versions of Black Man with a Gun. The old version that Ken isn't a fan of, Black Man with a Gun, the real one with the flag backwards in the background, and the new one, Reloaded. Ken owned a bunch of these and destroyed them, and then the ones that he didn't own, I talked to him a couple times. He'd be happy if these didn't exist, and this one was the only new one. But I think it's cool to have both of them. Got Crump's book, Speaking with Giants, on Amazon print. I think this one is signed. You're welcome. And then Armed by Gary Kleck and Don B. Cates. Is that his name? So there's something. Have you ever read anything like this?
No, I haven't read that. Is that the same Kleck that did the study?
Yeah, exactly. And this is all essentially the notes of the study. So this is my notes from, I was trying to read this because there's no audiobook of this. So I just did a rogue audiobook, or at least this much, or wherever my bookmarks stop. But this much of it I've done as a rogue audiobook. It's actually a pain in the ass doing an audiobook, FYI. So so I left some notes as I was reading through it because I don't plan on reading this one again. This is like reading something you'd have to read for study and like for a test or for like a class or
Hmm.
something. It's all data. Problem is, what's the date on it? It's old. And everybody started disputing the data immediately. And then now the data is just super old. It says published in 2001. So it's pretty old. For data at least. So it's dry, and the data is from the 80s or something, and it's like 2001 interpretation of it. And there's people that challenge the data is from like a number of cities, and they challenge that those cities really represent blah blah blah. So essentially, I don't know. At some point, data has to be redone, otherwise it's old or stale, or at least it can be challenged as being old and stale, right? Or maybe that's not the case, but I think for most of our stuff, it's what we end up with. We see new books coming out all the time.
Yeah, new books come out all the time, but a lot of them uses that old data, and it's a good thing to actually have on hand with the data that you can go back to. Remember, a lot of this stuff is just manipulation and then repeating of lies.
Yeah,
They,
real good
they,
point. Or like a weird perception of the real truth, like,
Mhm.
oh, guns are in every home. Oh, well, that must be dangerous. Well, there's no danger, but, yeah. Um, I'm going to say hey to the people that are out there live again, and it seems like we are getting a bunch of comments over here. We'll read through them a bit. Again, Woods is out there, first one to say hey, and he said John Lott, Gary Kleck, Yamane, show me data. And I don't have anything from Professor Yamane except for this book that he sent me from Jennifer Carlson, but I don't have his book. I did put his book in the poll, though. So, Dibs is saying real data. That I will confirm. Roy is saying, hey, doesn't think he's read any 2A books. I don't blame you. None of them are. I think the one called Glock, America's Gun, The Rise of America's Gun, is just a book about Glock, really, and it's written by a guy named Barrett, but he's not our Barrett. He's just some guy named Barrett. He's a nice guy. He's just some writer, though. He's not a gun person at all. But that's kind of good because the book is third party. It's not a gun person talking about stuff they're passionate about, and it's not an anti-gun person talking about stuff they hate. It's just a person talking about something he found interesting as he was researching it. And it is just about the Glock, but it's about the Glock, or I should say the Glock has existed in our country since 1984, and it came in a way that it was aware of the United States, but it could care less about the United States. It didn't come here to dominate the market. It came here reluctantly and then dominated the market, right? And then because of its being plastic and because it dominated the market, which pissed off a bunch of people, either the people who were loyal to their brands or the people that didn't like plastic. It happened at a time when plastic was still a fairly new material for that kind of stuff, for anything really, for tools and things. There wasn't a lot of plastic tools in '84. So there was a lot of reasons to be challenging the Glock or whatever. And while the book does explain all that, and it explains sort of the beginning of SHOT Show and stuff, because the Glock was coming in right as SHOT Show was kind of catching on. All those facets of the what's am I trying to say? Like the experience that Glock, the company, and the gun have had in the United States, end up with a great summary or a great angle on the guns in the United States because they've been attacked, because they've been taken for granted, and because they've done some really interesting business moves. The Glock story touches so much, like it's those circles touch so many aspects of the gun and Second Amendment community. For example, Ring of Fire guns are so the antis like to keep changing names, so they came out with suicide specials. They changed those to Saturday night specials. Then they kind of refined those to the Ring of Fire, and then the Ring of Fire guns were the scourge. Everybody agreed that they were too inexpensive to be worth keeping on, and everybody let them go. So the antis ravaged on them and started suing them. They'd started to bankrupt the companies by suing them. And that worked until Glock stopped that by some stuff you could read about in the book. And then the PLACA, the Protection from Lawful Commerce in Arms, happened. So the thing that is being challenged right now is the thing that's saving the gun industry, or making, I don't know what they try to pin that as, But essentially, a doctor in California was frustrated because he couldn't create laws to ban guns because there was no popular opinion on that. There was no medical reason to ban guns. So he figured out that if he sued individual gun companies, that he could bankrupt insurance companies or policies, however that works, and put gun companies out of business. And they started doing that all over. Think of all the lawsuits. Think of the Hillary hole. You ever heard of the Hillary hole? Smith and Wesson said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Clinton, all right, we'll drill a hole in our guns and add a safety on a revolver. An insane concept that's not necessary since the beginning of the revolvers, but in 1980, 100 years after the things are invented, 150 years after invented, we'll drill a hole in the side because we're a lock company and add a lock to it. Sorry, locksmiths out there. But, right, that was essentially part of that whole thing. Glock was like, no. Like, how about no? And they did some really clever, like, judo moves. It's a judo or a keto, but I say they did some legal aikido, let's say. And what happened? The placa, like first the lawsuit thing ended. Everybody had egg on their face for even suggesting it. They knew that they couldn't do it again the way they were doing it because of the way Glock ended it. And then the politicians said, we better stop this from happening again because these harassment lawsuits are not just bad for the gun industry, but they'd be bad for the car industry. They'd be bad for the alcohol industry. They'd be bad for the tobacco industry. They'd be bad for the food industry. They'd be bad for the medical industry. Like they'd be bad for every industry that someone could claim that the manufacturer is responsible for ill, use or bad use of the item. So it just made no sense. So they blocked it, and now everybody's, of course, saying, "Oh, that was just a move by the powerful gun lobby to keep gun." So, hey, how all that comes from the Glock book, and you get a really interesting perspective because the guy wrote it without even realizing he's like lifting the sheet or lifting the lid from such a interesting Second Amendment thing. But anyway, so I think that's a Glock, or I believe that's a Glock. How much is it? That even though it's a Glock book, it's a 2A book. So there are some out there that are gun books that are also 2A books, but then nowadays, for sure, we definitely have books that are focused almost entirely on the Second Amendment. Something like Guns Across the Border. Mike Deddy wrote about his story with Operation Wide Receiver. Essentially, a guy came up to him in Tucson Gun Show and said, I want to buy a bunch of AR receivers in the early 2000s before that was sort of a thing. There wasn't a lot of builders back then. So Mike, being an FFL, went to his ATF agent and said, hey, this happened and it's unusual. What should I do? And they said, let him go through and we'll keep an eye on that guy. And then that turned into Operation Wide Receiver, where they took Mike, who's an FFL and a gun writer down here in Tucson, and treated him as an expert witness. Well, a confidential informant. But confidential informants are typically criminals trying to get out of, so whatever they did wrong, narking on their friends or whatever, to get out of a case, right? So most confidential informants are treated like shit by both sides, by the law enforcement and the criminals, and from what I understand from the movies. But Mike, being a normal guy, being in that role, it was difficult for the agency to even treat him regularly because there was no infrastructure for that. So he ended up getting treated all the time like not all the time, but often like a criminal, or at least, the way they were able to deal with him was like a criminal. And as a person who's just trying to help out, he got run under the bus, trampled, however they say, by the bureaucracy of it all. So he writes a book about it. And of course, like I say, that incident kind of got copied and pasted to Phoenix, and that became what do they call it? The big one.
Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious, thanks. So Wide Receiver was Mike's project, and the ATF agents here in Tucson were doing all kinds of weird stuff, trying to put GPS units into the hollow stocks of AR-15s, sending those across the border. Like, no one's going to take the stock off their AR-15 and look in it and see a bunch of wires and stuff. And nobody's going to modify their guns and take the stock off an AR-15. I mean, these are cartels. They're not going to take their stocks off, maybe for shipment to get it across the border. Like, it made no sense that they're going to put the tracking devices in the stock. But, they did that kind of stuff. And when that got essentially out of hand, or it got kind of talked about, the offices up in Phoenix went, oh, it's a great idea. Let's do it times 10. And then just started pouring guns across the border. Turns out that was all essentially, at least the results of it seem to indicate that it was motivated by getting guns to Mexico, so then they could claim that we're sending guns to Mexico, right? Because they were going to ignore the fact that they literally told the FFLs to send the stuff to the criminals. But in the guise of tracking criminals with old-fashioned law enforcement techniques, they were going to essentially send a bunch of guns to Mexico so that there'd be guns from the United States in Mexico that then could be used to challenge our situation up here. So it's a pretty messed up thing. And Mike was really just explaining it as a writer. I mean, I know he's a 2A guy and everything, but when he wrote this, that wasn't the focus of the country. The focus was guns and gun history, and the government's doing this. We got Waco, we got Ruby Ridge. There's these are pretty big infringements, or is that the right word for like stepping over the line? Law enforcement stepping over the line. This was one of those incidents. So because it's guns, I think that falls into the 2A. So this might be a book that people, I guess what I was getting at is this might be a book people have read that's a gun book about a political thing, but it's essentially a 2A book. So that was a long rant off a Ray's post.
I just, it just gets me right in a friggin', how do I say this? It's annoying when you listen to people talk about what the government wouldn't do. And I'm like, you have no idea what the government has done already. How dare you try to explain what the government won't do? There's nothing the government won't do because it's nothing they haven't done already.
Yeah, I've heard it a couple of ways recently, and I think it's interesting to bring up because the way you're approaching it here is that our system of government is a bunch of ideally just people, but some of them are career politicians or bureaucrats or whatever. But essentially, it's individuals who either are elected or are appointed by elected people, and that might not be the most efficient for sure. Fascism is the most efficient because you have one guy barking orders. It's not right or good, but it's the most efficient. Or maybe communism or something, right, where there's one dictator telling you what to do. But in the way we've got things, it's not perfect or anything. But what happens is things change, right? Like there'll be eras and there'll be people in power with one opinion, and then votes will happen and people will be changed as, their elected roles will be changed. People will get appointed to different roles or reappointed, and policies change. So we kind of flap like a flag. And I don't think that's a bad thing. We aren't whatever some queen or king thinks. We aren't what some church thinks. We aren't what some fascist who just took the power by force thinks. We're a whole bunch of people who get together and constantly rule by committee, which is super frustrating and annoying. But at the same time, as much as it's annoying, we never really have to worry about it getting super annoying. It has a couple of times, but we rarely have to worry about that because of the way that, I don't want to say it's temporary, but we have a pretty decent system where people can't or won't be appointed or voted in long enough to create constant problems. I know there's definitely places, islands, and whole states where that is the bad part of that. But we have transient. I don't know the right word for that, but we don't have we don't have to deal with one way of thinking for the entire lifespan of an individual who owns a country or runs a country. We do have like a 4-8 year kind of flat back and forth potentially.
We have the ability to remove these people without having to throw a coup. We can do recalls. Yeah, we have things built into the system that rids us of these people. Given that enough of us wake up and realize you're being manipulated, we can get rid of them. Because we have powers that be behind the scene that no one elects. But when we just start chucking their puppets out of power, they lose some of that. They'll never be broke. They'll never get convicted, but they will be frustrated. We had it happen here. I was in on the recall efforts of one of our state senators, and it didn't work out. He was able to bully and frustrate and do whatever, but he took a political hit, and fast forward 10 years, and he got beat by a truck driver that spent less than 10 grand of his own money. And he was dumped on his butt and pretty much embarrassed politically. And they are thinking he's not even going to bother run again. Like the people have showed you what they think of you, and you lost to a Republican in a deep blue place that you've been working almost for 20 years. So we have a means to get rid of them. We just have to pull our heads out of our collective butts and get busy and stop allowing ourselves to be played. And when we do that, we make changes. And sometimes we I love this usually when a one president from one party wins, the other party gets control of the Senate and House. Like we try to keep them frustrated so one party isn't in power completely.
Yeah, seriously, that's what happens. And we learn our lesson, right? When we have a time, an era, or whatever, even just an election cycle where everybody's on the same side, it gets to be like that analogy where the island's going to flip over. You know, it gets so left or right that everybody hates
Mm-hmm.
it, or enough people hate it, and they vote, like you said, to a quagmire. And I think it's frustrating, but it's one of the best features of our government. You know, I fear a government that can operate effectively and swiftly, because then it's up to the whim of whoever's got that that button or that steering wheel. Okay, so Plain Nut is joining us. Said I picked up the 44th edition of the Blue Book of Gun Values. I have very few gun books compared to my other nonfiction books. I do need to update the Nappin's Orange book. I don't know what that one is. Do you know what that one is?
Yeah, Evan Nappen, he just put out a new book. He's what known as, well, I think he has a podcast called Gun Lawyer, and he's known as the New Jersey's like Second Amendment lawyer. He's the dude. He's the go-to guy if you get hit with a gun charge in Jersey. He's made his living on that. He speaks and works with U.S. Law Shield because that's all we can have here. So if you ever want to see Evan Nappen speak and you live in New Jersey, just look for somebody hosting U.S. Law Shield, and you can go see the guy for like all of $20 and ask questions directly. But yeah, the Orange Book of Evan Nappen is pretty much he breaks down New Jersey gun laws and the process to get your permits and all of that. So the new one probably still not even updated with uh, the latest rules they just pulled out of their butts for carry permits here because nothing they do is permanent with the carry permit thing. It's all interim on purpose, obviously. But that is something you need to get if you live in Jersey and actually want to know the law and not go online asking a bunch of people in a Facebook forum questions. You can buy Evan Nappen's book and it's spelled out for you in regular people language that you can understand. It's in actual plain English.
That's pretty cool. And that kind of, I think of Alan Corwin when I was looking at who to include in this list. Alan Corwin is a writer and a publisher, and he's done the gun owners guides. I don't know if they're as popular as they used to be, but he's essentially done a gun owners guide for each state, which is kind of summarizes the state's gun situation. And that you can imagine that was a much bigger issue when only a few states had concealed carry, and they had a kind of a range of gun laws that were all over the place. So you'd need these books. And then there was the Traveler's Guide. He would publish those as well. I don't think he wrote it, but he published that. And Alan Corwin has written some books that are like, let's say it features all the gun laws or the major gun laws, and it would have them verbatim, like, in legal speak. And then there would be
Mm-hmm.
a summary in regular speak. So it sounds like that's what your guy is doing in New Jersey, but the big difference is Alan is just some writer. He's just a guy. He ain't a lawyer. Where if you have a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer doing it, there's probably less potential for, there might be a little bit more detail, but you're going to err on the side of accuracy versus the side of, not knowing, essentially, unawareness.
Well, the cool thing about Evan's thing now, I don't have mine. I mean, I had one. I don't have it on me right now. Um, the cool thing about Evan's book is he also, again, if I remember correctly, does case law. See, what's written is one thing, but how what's written works out in court is actually the real way the law works, regardless of how it's written. And I didn't know that. You know what I mean? I thought the rules were the rules. No, that's not how it works. Whatever's written, you can assume it works this way, but in real life, it works totally different in court. So that's
And
good.
that's for that facet, or that whatever you kind of call, like, again, kind of a feature, I guess, or a glitch of our system. I think it's a feature. For that reason, you need to have books written all the time, at least when they're specific, because things change. And if it's specific 70 years ago or 20 years ago or 10 years ago, it's not right today. It's different today. So kind of necessitates having to either keep current on the books, or at least, well, there's probably not too many books that just offer updates. Most of them probably just republish.
That's why it's important. Look, if you're going to be in on this topic on this subject, there's a lot you can't ducking in and out and thinking you know what happens is not really how it works. That's why I try not to give legal advice. I tell people where to go to get it because it's just a lot to keep up with, and I don't even like this part of it. I just want to hang out with my friends and shoot guns. and I'm into advocacy because I think it's necessary. People listen to me because of the work I put in, so I'll stay in it and keep pushing it and doing what I have to do. But yeah, it's not something I'm passionate about, the law side of it. I'm not. But we need people who are passionate in any way they can to make their voices heard. And that's what I'm rolling with. What is this, man?
I agree. The law side of it is stupid and boring, and it kind of feeds the whole like thing. Like, I don't want to have to pay attention to this stuff, and I don't like to encourage them, I guess is the word. This is a thing I did because this is a pain in the ass, right? This is like 10 books, and it's like half my desk right here, and it costs money, and is all I have. So I wanted to see, one, how many gun books there were. I forget what I started with. I probably started with like 10 or 20 when I was doing a bunch of these kind of projects. I'd done a couple of card decks before. So I don't think I started with a whole deck of cards, but I may have. I don't remember. This was years ago now. I might have written on here when I did it, 2019. So it's been a while since I'd done this deck. But essentially what this is are a card for each gun book. And when I started getting into it, I was like, well, I should include this. Well, I should include this. Well, I should include this. And this became a very large deck to represent. Here's that Glock book I was talking about. We'll use that as an example. So it's Glock, The Rise of America's Gun. Oh, wait, yeah, this is the one I can focus. Glock, The Rise of America's Gun. It's written in 12 by this guy named Barrett. Not our Barrett, different Barrett. 304 pages. I don't know what that meant. Mostly text. It's 2A, and is that legal? I forget what these symbols mean, but these symbols kind of tell you what the focus of the book is. And then it's a hardcover. And then it's ISBN or whatever that's called, and then a picture of the book. And then I think I wrote some stuff on some of them if it was worth writing. So essentially this is a deck that represents a 2A library. But I am me, so I included things like Applegate's Kill or Get Killed, and like all of the books that Applegate and Fairbairn wrote that essentially became your Marine fighting manual. But these were like all from Defendu, which was the martial art that they created in the streets of Shanghai, Hong Kong back in the day. And then they became the origin of the OSS. Well, that was some of the first technical manuals, and it happens to be about killing people, but oh well, that's some of the first technical manuals. So if I started going back even further, I got to somewhere in here will be the book that the guys who wrote or created the NRA, they started. So if you get into all of that, it turned into like this, I guess, where the NRA was invented, and then they created a magazine called The Rifle, and then, well, the NRA didn't. Somebody created a magazine called The Rifle, and I think this was one of the guys that started the NRA, if I remember right. Like I said, it's been a while since I did this research. So essentially, I was wondering, what's the first book written about guns? Well, it's not a book. It's these periodical magazines, and this is the lineage where it turns into the American Rifleman. So the American Rifleman technically starts as this bi-weekly or a weekly magazine for rifle shooters. So rifle shooting was such a big deal that in 1885, there was a weekly magazine for it. Essentially, that becomes Shooting and Fishing, and then Outdoor Life or something, or it becomes this one, Arms and the Man, and then it gets bought by NRA so that it doesn't die off because the publisher died or something.
Wow.
And then it becomes the American Rifleman. And somewhere back then is when Outdoor Life started. So, a long time ago. And then Field and Stream. So these magazines that were for a long time kind of the FUD magazines that are boring, they kind of have a long lineage and they've been around for a while. So I guess I have these out of order. But anyhow, that's how it kind of started. And then I was like, well, the Boy Scouts started their manuals, and that's technically something that's, instruction. And a lot of us learns that way. So then you start getting into Gun Digest, started in 44, Shotgun News in 1946. I had no idea, right?
Wow.
And this was the book that kind of started it all. You ever heard of Hatcher's Notebook?
No. maybe
47, and it's probably as thick as this. It's a big, thick manual of everything you can imagine. Strength of rifles, automatic rifles, the Pedersen device, cartridge. It was just like a really interesting book in 1947. So it was one of those books that a lot of us looked at as little kids because it was the only gun book around or something. More versions of Defendu, essentially, Applegate and them.
Oh, by the way, you were right. Shanghai.
Okay.
Rex Applegate was in Shanghai.
The same thing,
flying squad.
I don't know.
I don't know. Didn't even check.
But then we get Negroes and Guns from Robert Williams in 1962.
Now, I have that book. Man, that is because what he did and what I'm doing sort of kind of parallel. If you squint your eyes, he joined the Marine Corps. He was stationed in Camp Lejeune. He got out and actually went to the NRA and became an NRA firearms instructor, and then stepped from that into, actually, he was a civil rights advocate that became an NRA instructor so they can get access to buy-in weapons.
Because he understood that gun ownership, awareness, our rights, the civil right, and the actual ability to protect yourselves is civil rights, right? Is part of our. And
so he stepped in there.
1962.
Yep, and he was able to buy firearms from the CMP and arm the neighborhoods, because what the Klan would do on Saturday nights is drive through black neighborhoods and just shoot out the windows of people's houses. So pretty much starting Friday, if you lived in a black neighborhood, when the sun went down, you pretty much got everybody in the back of the house or ducked, and they just drive through the neighborhood shooting the place up. So they also shot at them when they were protesting a swimming pool that wouldn't let black kids in. It was paid for by taxpayer money, but they wouldn't let black kids in. And the black kids had to swim in a nearby creek. Well, 2 kids drowned in that creek. So the black leaders went around and protested at the pool that they should be able to at least swim a couple of days of the week in the pool. And it became a thing. Well, they were shot at during that time while they were peacefully protesting, and called the police. And the police said, I don't hear anything, as rounds were cracking over their head. Like the police were there laughing in his face. And that's when he decided, okay, if this is where it's going to be, we're not going to be unarmed. And that started him. And it's a really good book because it's written letting you know all the things the actual government did to stop these people from actually getting their equal rights, talking about state and federal. So it's crazy. It's a good book to read. And again, like I said, if you squint a little bit, I can see the parallels between what he's doing and what I'm doing, as in Marine, Second Amendment advocate, firearms instructor, and then trying to get word out. He created a nationwide newsletter in the early 60s. That pretty much had to circumvent all publications, almost like guerrilla marketing, that was in city to city. And I don't know if it went through fax machine or if they had fax. However, they had to transmit it and then make it on mimeograph and hand it out by hand or mail it out that way. And it was all done without the backing of the NAACP, because he was the vice president or president of the NAACP. And when he said it was time to arm up, NAACP booted him out. They actually didn't boot him out. They closed down the entire chapter.
That is awesome, dude. I know that I've seen this book on reading lists, and Maj will have something where he's like, oh, read this book or something, but that's the first time I've heard a summary of it. So I appreciate it. I've been waiting because I knew it's from 62. And my thing is I like to buy an old one, right? Just for whatever reason, I don't like to buy a new one. One is cheaper sometimes. And it's just, I think it's neater to own an old one because it might not. Anyway, so I've been waiting to buy an old one. And it's one of those things where whenever I get the itch to go buy a book or whatever, or something, I'm buying a book on eBay, and then I start looking for other books because I might as well, I'm on eBay buying books or something kind of thing. And I've I've had this in my cart as a brand new one, and then I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, wait. And then my other thing is, I really like going to gun shows, and part of the reason, I guess, of doing something like this is I can thumb through this, and I know, like, I want this book, let's say, or I want this book.
Mm-hmm.
I know what the cover looks like. So now,
Yep.
if I see something where I see the spine of a book where it's, red and white like that, something in my head might go flip through that, see what that is. And then
That is
if
so
I can
cool.
get this at a gun show for like $1, that's the ultimate for me. That's the win of a gun show, is when I can find stuff I want. I don't need to have it, right? I want to read it eventually, but I'm not dying for not reading it or whatever. But
It's
I
a
want
fast
the
read.
real one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so anyway. So that was, I think that was neat, because we think of awareness of whatever you want to call, like now we've got, we just had the convention in
Mm-hmm.
Georgia. It's not a new experience. It's a new experience for new shooters. But in 1962, this was hardly a new experience. Like you said, people were literally getting shot at, and it was a fucking way it was. It was the freaking way the world was. And by
Yep.
arming themselves to shoot back so that there was an actual lethal consequence for it, doesn't matter if it's a law, doesn't matter if it's the sheriff's gonna come. If there's a lethal consequence to it, guess what stopped happening? So,
Mm-hmm.
and then what happened is, instead of everybody getting upset and continuing the riffs, people had what's the word, like the character to put the guns down in their homes and then get back to business once that fucking violence against them stopped. And that
Mm-hmm.
is epic. And that's why this isn't 70 books in here, right? Because this was something that helped end that, not end, but you know what I mean, helped reduce that situation that was out of control. And I just think that's neat. And it's something, I'm not saying there's anything, there's other books that are happening now, but those are necessary for today. I'm just saying that this is something that's been an element since essentially the beginning. Because what's interesting too, when you start looking at the dates, there's a big gap here. There's like a 30-year gap between essentially some of these books, and then it's the war, and then it's that gap till the 60s. So these are
Mm-hmm.
almost generational that these things pop out. And maybe I'm not enough into books. Maybe there's some tech here. Maybe, publishers have something to do with this. Like when it was possible to be self-published, for example, like he may have had this book, I don't know, but maybe he had this book ready in 54, but there was just no way to self-publish or something. But by 62, or maybe by 62, a publisher grabbed them and actually made it happen. I don't know the story like on that end, how many of
Yeah.
these are self-published or what.
Yeah, I got that one too. No Second Chance Winner by Bill Jordan. Some
And
stuff is
what is
antiquated.
this
Some stuff
guy?
makes sense.
This guy's an old cop, right? A cop from back
Mm-hmm.
in the
Border
day,
Patrol.
like Border Patrol. Okay, so somebody who actually did some stuff and then started to write about it a little bit, but again, 60s. Then you get the first reloading stuff. I have some of these in here because this is, oh dang, I didn't write on here. But this is 1968. So guess what this was? An instigation for the
Mm-hmm.
1968 Gun Control Act. There's a couple of magazines that I own that are like the first time they use the word assault weapon and stuff. This was one of the first times the national media was weaponized against our rights. This was a 1971 remake of some of these first things in a one-bound book, and I think I finally owned this instead of trying to find these, which have been super expensive and rare. You can get this, which is all of the reprints bound together. I won't go through all of these, but that's essentially, I'll just keep flipping through them here as we're going. But, there's Masada Ayoub's first book in 80.
Mm-hmm. That's hilarious.
Right?
Just some of these books, man. Man, how many of those have I looked through until the pages fell out?
So that's what, we kind of started with that question of the blue book, and with that first comment from Plain Nut. And I was going to mention the thing about the blue book. It started in 85, and he just passed away a few years ago. And it's a cool company. Every year they come out essentially with a new book that would give the value, a range of values and the conditions. But also it gave you a summary of the company, and it gave you some history of the models. And it's just like a cool book to read sometimes. And it was the kind of book you just open it up and thumb through it. It's no narrative at all. It's just a list of a zillion guns and a zillion companies, alphabetical by company name. But every once in a while there'd be like a paragraph or a blurb about something. And as a gun shop guy, going behind, the counter and having to use this thing as a resource daily, like I got used to these books intimately. So I knew where to find stuff real quick. And I'd also browse through it so many times, looking for specific questions and then being bored and stuff. Like, yeah, these things are super neat. So every year they come out with a new one, which means if you have a relationship with a gun shop, chances are they get a new one every year. They kind of have to. They probably get more than one depending on the size of the shop, which means they have at least one of these sitting around at the end of the year that's kind of old. So if you get a relationship with any kind of gun shop and ask them, you got any old blue books back there? They might just give you one that's a couple years old because it has no value to them anymore. And sometimes they put them out. You look in the one, everything in this box is $1 or something kind of bins, because they're kind of useless because the values aren't any good anymore. And a lot of people consider it pointless. But the data that's in there, just the interesting little stuff, I mean, it's worth a couple of bucks, but you can sometimes get these. You can often get these for free. So I'm going to throw that out there. If you don't mind getting an old one, ask around. It's like getting old donuts. If you really like donuts, you don't want to pay for them, wait around. They throw away old donuts. Or they used to. I don't know what to do. So that was Plain Nuts question from before. We're like 46 minutes in, and I guess we really aren't doing a quiz. You may have figured out we're not doing a quiz. He followed up with, I know half Knappin's book discusses federal gun laws too. Assuming the way they interact with Jersey, or is it just to be a summary of gun laws?
I hate to say this, I don't remember. I went directly to the New Jersey part of it because, that's where I live and that's what I do. I wasn't really worried about the federal part because federal kind of stays the same for the most part for when I purchased the book. It was New Jersey gun laws and the permitting process that they were bullcrapping about. And he gave like the top, 5, 10 reasons that your PD gives you for delaying your permitting process. And my PD did like 4 out of 10 of them, like in order, that were all bullcrap.
Like they're using the book as their way of blocking everything instead of just learning about it. They're using it as their blueprint to block everything.
It's like,
I read this book. I found a new way we can block people.
Yeah, so it was ridiculous. And pretty much by the time I did my last pistol purchase permits, I was like, hey, it should take you guys no more than 30 days according to the law to get this done. Oh, well, sometime it shouldn't take you more than 30 days. The FBI says 4 hours. It's a lot of leeway. So I'll be calling next week.
We were talking about Aaron Zellman's books earlier in the JPFO. This is the books. So they looked like little cartoonish looking pamphlets. And Gun Control Kills Kids. So definitely like had titles that would make you look twice and go, what's this about now? And he was no hold bar. Like he was in your face. And Gun Owners America goes around saying they're the no compromise. Well, JPFO was the in your face anti-gun control organization. Anyway, so like I say, they were kind of what's the word? Like they were motivated more than most to get to their what's the word? Like their reader group, their what do you call their focus to get the message across that, hey, let's not let things get out of control with gun control here.
Well, they didn't waste their time. I mean, they were right up on it for even this generation. That title will snatch you right into it.
Yeah, seriously. I was going to mention that this is a bunch of different, each one of these is a book essentially. Some of them are magazines, so technically it represents a series of magazines, but essentially this is a book each, and that's half of my deck, and we're in 1996. So all of these books in before the year 2000, this is what we would have had to look at as far as books, right? The topics and the number of books. This many books have been written in the last 20 years. So up until 1980, so from 1880 to 1980, 100 years, 20 years. So the interest and the awareness of this stuff and the ability to create books has definitely had some influence here. So the next one coming up in the list is, or from the questions, is Wesley saying, has a real question. Is there any state I can purchase ammo without a permit and background check from a state government? All of them. I don't think there's any state that do require that right now. There's a state, California is attempting, is it California that's attempting to require that? I know somebody's attempting to require that right now.
What's that?
That need a pass a background check to buy ammo. There's no state,
California's trying to do it, yeah.
but there's no state that I'm aware of that requires it right now, like as of today.
Oh, no, what do you call it? You need a, hold on. Do I have to show a firearms ID card to get ammo in Jersey? Hey, I stopped buying ammo in Jersey, by the way. Hey, Plain Nut, let me know. He's in Jersey.
Oh, okay. So I didn't think about that. So I guess that's the problem, and that's the way that they mess with us, because I don't even think of that as an issue. And obviously I'm wrong if there's states that are requiring it. I don't
New
know.
York just implemented it. That was it. Somebody actually wrote me on my yesterday's posts about it on the 13th, I think, right? They implemented it according to what they wrote. I just read that this morning. It's real scumbaggery because you can drive across the border and just order. It's so stupid.
The background check is, I guess, what I was glitching on. But as far as the having a permit or whatever, that might be a requirement in states that I'm not familiar with. But that's just a
I
fact.
know in Jersey.
I never did the research on that. I've never seen a map, or I've never seen a list of the states, so I haven't seen that one yet.
In Jersey, they make, if it's handgun ammo, you get logged in the book at the firearms dealer or at the gun shop. And I just stopped. I just stopped buying ammo in Jersey. I'm like, just F you. Because, I mean, and then at one time, this last push that these morons did, yeah, there you go. It is. Pistol, ammo and rifle ammo, you need a FID. So it's the same dang thing. Oh, wow. Yeah, I just don't buy it here because of that. My issue is what they did was if you bought, or they were proposing, if you bought a certain amount of ammo, and I think it was like 200 rounds or something, you go on a list that gets sent to the Attorney General's office. And I'm like, well, brace yourself, son, for that list, because I buy 1,000 rounds at a time. I host events where we can burn up 200 rounds of one caliber because I have 5 ports and I give my guys 2 to 3 boxes of ammo per. Well, let's see, 5 times 50. That's 70,000 rounds of ammo I go through at one diversity shoot. I don't do math well. But it's ridiculous. Oh, we're going to let the Attorney General know. Well, congratulations. Hey, I'll do you one better. I'll tag the governor in everything I write on social media. I don't care. The last one knew me by at least my phone number coming up on their ID, caller ID.
I was to say, that's sort of the silver lining of something like that. If something like that does happen and they start to track, then what they're going to find out, the result of that, and they're going to try to spin it, of course, but the result of that will be that a hell of a lot more ammo than they could have ever imagined gets shot recreationally at a wall.
It's like, so how many rounds of ammo do you think the horrific human being that shot out the Batman movie, I mean, what do you think he ordered 70,000 rounds and was practicing every day and taking, running the Magpul DVD over and over again? No. He's a little psycho that ordered whatever he had on him. And yeah, and he took it and shot up a place.
It's I heard a really good one. It was on, I think it was on Instagram, that, oh man, now I can't think of it, because it was some regular channel, just probably some popular thing of the day type of channel. It wasn't a gun channel, or definitely wasn't a gun rights channel, but it was probably just somebody who's fed up with New Mexico. But they said something, I'll try to think of it when I'm not thinking of it, but essentially I was getting at, though, that would be like saying, if somebody's buying, that to cut down on drunk driving, we're going to limit you to only being able to put 10 gallons of gas in your tank, ignoring all the trucks that need huge gas cans to be able to, or gas tanks to be able to get across the country to do their shit business, or just delivery vehicles that need to drive around town to make, to get work done or to allow business to happen. Like, to suggest that, well, we think that a smaller gas tank will solve the problem and we're oblivious and, immune to any consequences by, our actions here. Let's say that you can't have a gas tank larger than 10 gallons, and then implemented that law. And then all of a sudden prices go up and everything grinds to a halt. It's that kind of mentality or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you could get it through their head that like what you're doing is limiting the people who are the last of the potential problem. Like you're not doing anything to the people that are the problem. And instead of doing anything to address that or focus on that or get a better idea of what we could do there, you're blindly creating strife by just ignorantly or intentionally wasting everybody's time, like going after this. Is it a red herring at that point? I think it's something else when it's a deliberate strategy to take people off.
Sabotage. Yeah. I have no idea because look, people use words all the time and I'm not a wordsmith. I'm really not. But what I can point out is bullcrap and the fact that a lot of these politicians they're getting told what to do. All right, a lot of them will get told what to do because there are other people with agendas that control purse strings. That's one. Two, it's great that if you have an idea, but if you only run it through your echo chamber, well, if they don't know any more than you do, or they have the same perspective as you do, then you're not finding out how it's going to affect other people. And that's just being tone deaf to your constituents, because that's everyone is affected by it. So running around going, we're going to send a list of all the names and order over 200 rounds or 300 rounds to the Attorney General. Well, brace yourself for him being flooded, baby. Because just the guys that I was supposed to shoot with last night order more than 500 rounds at a time. It's like just one indoor league orders more than that. And when are you going to start investigating people? What's the magic number that makes you get off your butt and send state police over? What, I received a shipment of 3,000 rounds this month? Or is it more? What if I buy 2 cases of 22? That's 10,000 rounds of ammo in one shot. Like, what's the magic number, If I have some Apple seeds, go ahead.
Are you getting an echo when I don't mute? Because I got the new mic and I'm still trying to figure out who it's. Are you getting any feedback if I leave it?
I was hearing some weird squeaky sound. I didn't know what that was. It wasn't much.
Okay.
If you have it muted now,
I'll keep muting then, because I'm used to muting anyway. It's just that
okay.
I was just curious. So as you can see, as I get into the more recent books, I am adding more. Like this Green Eyes, that's Kyle Lamb's book, and then Plasterer's book. So I've got some
got
that are
that.
here. But,
what was that? Was that Pincus's book, Combat Focus Shooting? One of them.
This one is Pincus's first one. Was it his first one? 7.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, I have and have given away some of his. He gave them to me. You can say what you want to about Rob. When I just told him about, there's another one of his books right there. I gave that one away, Combat Focus Shooting. When I told him about what I was doing, he was like, "Sounds great. Here's a bunch of stuff that you can give away." And I was like, "That's pretty impressive." And then he told me to go to the firearms industry and get help, and that's what I did. That's funny because, some of these Negro on the Gun, got that one also. The nonviolent stuff will get you killed. I have that one also. Now, what is this? Some of them, it's just funny because I'm looking at them and I'm recognizing the covers. Urban Rifle by Clint Smith, Yehuda's books.
Right, and it gets to be where you see them so often. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get them in a deck like this, so that, one, I can carry them around, because it's impossible to carry this many books around. This would be like a freaking library bus or whatever, one of those books.
Yeah.
automobiles or whatever of books. But and then to keep them in order, because I think it's interesting once in a while to kind of see the progress or the evolution or whatever you want to call that. I guess the evolution of, I talk about training all the time, and that's why I included a bunch of the instructors in here, because I can add more things to these. These aren't numbered; they're only ranged by dates. But I can already think of a couple that I'm missing out of here from the beginning. But if part of this, and I probably wasn't thinking about it in 2019 yet, but part of what I can do here is kind of chart through publication the evolution of handguns, because the way they shot the guns from 1888, which are different guns than we have today, are going to be different than whatever Clint is talking about, whatever he experienced. And that's still, old experience compared to, compared to Yuta, who's talking about parents and, in gun training, which is still a thing. It's just different than Clint Smith talking about, carbine training. But yeah, so the next one is, Chris was saying, you need an FID card or a license to carry in Massachusetts, and some shops won't sell you pistol calibers on the, what is an FID? Probably a firearms identification, some license to own or something, or license to purchase maybe. Hope you don't have a lever gun in 357. Yeah, that can be frustrating. Or if you even own a carbine in stupid 9mm, if a place isn't going to sell you handgun or ammo. That used to be a thing for kids. When you're 18 to 20, there'd be places that wouldn't sell you pistol ammo. Or is it just they won't sell anything but 22 to kids? I forget how it works because it's been a while. But, that's one of those things that is an unnecessary annoyance or an unnecessary issue. I think that this perception that, if we don't sell certain calibers to certain people, we're helping, or we're doing something. Nah, why don't you build a new shooting range? That'll help. Give somebody something to do. Don't worry about what caliber they're holding in their hand.
Well, it's just the ignorant coming up with things to harass everybody else. They have no idea what they're doing. In Jersey, one of the times I went to testify, these morons are talking about making 5.7 ammo, certain 5.7 armor-piercing ammo illegal. I'm like, it's already illegal. Oh, then what difference does it make? It's passing a gun law that's not doing anything. That's what difference it makes. It's just passing the law for the sake of passing the law. And that was the Republican that said, what difference does it make? The guy that was on our side.
But it's money, and it's republishing. If nothing else, it's just republishing all the stupid books. And then all the lawyers and judges having to think about another dumb thing that's just a nuance of something else. So it does have consequence. Just because they want to ignore the consequence doesn't remove the consequence. But okay, so Woods is saying there's a bunch of jokers that do a 2A book club on Barbecue's channel. So yeah, that's a thing that happens sometimes on Thursdays. It's usually on the last Thursday of the month. Barbecue, Guns and Barbecue, who hosts a Tuesday night show, open panel show, with the topic of 2A news and conversation, awareness and activism. He has a Thursday show where they'll, like I say, do a book review. This month, the book is How to Meet Friends and Influence People. Is that what it's called?
Make friends? How to make friends and influence people? Okay.
Yeah, Make Friends and Influence People. Have you read that one?
Isn't that Dale Carnegie's book?
Yeah.
No, I haven't read it. My dad had it. And
really?
Yeah, my dad had it. My dad used to make me read his college level books when I was 10 or 12 years old, and write book reports because he wanted me to improve my handwriting. And in doing so, he wanted, I think he had me do his homework. That's what it was. Because he went back to college when I was a kid. And that's what I would do. I would read his books. So when he said that one, it looked impressive. But by then I was sick and tired of reading his books, and he cut me loose and allowed me to read whatever I wanted to. And that's when I got into reading That's when I got into reading Stony Man and what's his name? Matt Bolan, Stony Man, Phoenix Force. I found those books and I
Like
went
action
that way.
fiction.
Action fiction, and I just started piling up on that, and that created my love affair with the Beretta with 93R, which I finally got to shoot one when my friend Josh Prince, he has one. And that opened that. I just shot an Automag in 2020 at SHOT Show, one of the new ones. That was interesting. They still haven't come out yet, but I shot one there, and the Browning High Power is one of the guns that was used by people in that book and a Colt Python. So those were books. I mean, when were they written initially? I think in the
That I don't know.
70s.
I don't know if I've read those. And is that people were carrying like a python, like on their
Mm-hmm.
side? Yeah, on their holster.
Yeah, this was these guys were all former military, yada yada.
Yeah,
Uh,
that would have been a thing. Like nowadays, people think of a python or any of the pony guns as, oh, you own one. Interesting. It's like a fancy muscle car that you
wow.
take out on Sundays or something. You take it to the range and look at it and shoot around or through it. But back in the olden days, people would put that on and carry it because it was just the current new gun.
Those babies were first produced in '69. And then, of course, they were published from '69 to 2020. It was called The Executioner, yeah, but the main character was called Mac Bowling Books. And Don
Oh,
Pumble.
okay. Then I didn't realize, and I think I have listened to some books on tape. Then the way you mentioned it right there, I think I have listened to some books on tape.
Yeah, so I'm checking out the dates because I didn't know. Okay, The Executioner, they had a spinoff series, the Able Team that started in '82, Phoenix Force started in '82, and then Stony Man series. I remember that series in which Able Team and Phoenix Force were eventually merged in '91. I didn't know they were. Oh, that is cool. It's just stuff you didn't know about something you read. Anyway, and they got into a battle over with Marvel because Macabolin and pretty much the Punisher are almost the same backstory and
Oh, shit.
everything.
That
Oh
makes a
yeah.
lot of sense because there's a lot of what's the word? There's a lot of stuff that's recycled, so to speak, but
Yep.
just ripped off. Yeah.
But what that allowed me to do as a reader was appreciate the fact that reading books could take you places. You learn about other countries and cultures if it's a well written book. And you wouldn't think this, action fiction, easy to read stuff would be, but then all of a sudden you're learning about Liberia and they do some history of Liberia and stuff like that. And it just opens your eyes to like what it's like to be in Morocco. And that's where I learned about a lot of stuff. And it's like, it's if you start reading and you get into reading, you'll learn more than just about that particular subject.
So it sounds like we're talking a time when there wasn't the need or the interest to read about Second Amendment stuff as much as just reading about guns were interesting. But I do remember reading a bunch of different ones that they would give you insight to what was actually going on. I mean, we're talking Vietnam for us
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Like the people that came back from Vietnam had no interest in talking about it at all, and they hardly even talk. They weren't going to talk about it with World War II people. They talked about it with each other a little bit, but leaning on each other's shoulders wasn't the same kind of thing as back then. You'd drink you'd have a barbecue or something, but I don't know. So anyway, things were just a little bit different. But that was insight. You could read a book and somebody would explain something in a book, and then you could go, okay, I have a little bit better insight of what uncle somebody or cousin somebody was going through or something. And then there was the um, seeing the other, what's the word, like the other branches. So if you're in the Marines, I was in the Army. If how do we know about the Air Force other than these kind of things would give you some insight maybe about their training or their day to day or what their concerns were or their campaigns or whatever. So um, now you just
Yeah.
watch movies and everything's fictionalized and nobody. I mean, you have to kind of seek that stuff out, but that's pretty much we had less choices, I guess. So that was of the stuff we could read about fiction or we could read something else. But this was actually something interesting. That's what I was going to say too. Is that it's for me, it was like I could read everybody can read, I guess, but you'd have a choice to read something that was useful, or like a murder mystery. I could give a shit about a murder mystery, but if
Mm-hmm.
I could read fiction about something like from Marcinko or something where it's kind of not reality, but it's all based on the tools and techniques and things they were doing, and it's just a fiction version of it. It's just way more interesting something to read. And for me, it was audio tapes when I was driving before Sirius Radio and stuff. That was the shit. Have a cassette tape of like a really cool book on tape. Listening to the James Bond books on tape, I guess, would have been the era before, or an era
Yeah,
before.
it is interesting because it allows you to, again, it's, and I started listening to old school radio programs, but that's totally different. But
Those were good too, yeah.
books on tape really allowed me to, because especially long rides. To me, a short ride was North Carolina to Jersey, on a weekend to leave. So, boom, jump in the vehicle, pop in the tape, hit the road, literally pop in the tape. Because that's what we had. We had cassette tapes on book. Cassette tapes. And that's how I rolled back in the
And a
day.
book might be like, depending on the book, like a Marcinko book was like 2 to 4 cassettes,
Hmm.
and a real book, like a book like this, would be like 6 or 8 cassettes. It could be a lot of cassettes you're dragging around with you.
Dude, Tom Clancy, I think, was 8. Was it Summer All
Oh yeah,
Fears?
yeah, yeah. It took me from all the way across the country to listen to a Tom Clancy. I think one of the ones they made into a movie eventually. But yeah, and it was
Hmm.
worth it because it was super interesting. Yeah, it was really neat.
Oh, yeah, dude. I love that. I'm like, dude, what is this job like? Just reading books into a microphone and
Like I said, it's
still
super
making it.
frustrating because it's like you read a whole bunch of things and then you realize the mic wasn't on. Like, dang it, I got to read that whole chapter again. You already read it,
My,
you know.
I'm wondering, like, when does it get, you're just saying words? How
Well, that happens
before.
for sure when I'm reading. Like say, I read a whole bunch of this one. You'll
Mhm.
you'll zone out, and I'm reading. I know I'm reading the right words, but I'm not paying attention anymore. And then I'll be listening. My brain will come back and go, "Oh shit, where am I?" And I'm still reading, but I literally have to come back to where it was like almost like you're in a conversation and you get distracted. But no, it'll
uh,
happen, especially when it's mind numbing. Like this book is all. I keep pointing to Mike's book.
Data.
It's actually Armed that I'm reading or was reading. But yeah, it's just all data and interpretation of data, and it's all super old. It's almost just archival because it's a book from like the 80s or something. So it's kind of useless and it's super debated. It was just more of a thing to do, a thing to accomplish to get an audio version of it. But yeah, it's definitely when your mind wanders while you're just reading the boilerplate, essentially, like the stuff. If they've got to say something to qualify, like this is a scientific study based on blah blah blah, based on blah blah blah, and it uses blah blah. Like you just got that's what I'm hearing in my head too. Like I'm not paying attention to this. I could care less.
Mm-mm.
In
Uh,
1980, what he used to qualify the data on here.
who was this? Chris Bulldog. Old school radio shows. Satellite radio actually had a channel dedicated to that, and I realized that pretty much most of my life I've been up before, up and at work or going to work before 6 in the morning, and that's pretty much what I would listen to. Listen to old Sherlock Holmes. Listen to what is it? Real stories of the Texas Rangers. That was actually a radio show before Dragnet.
Oh, that sounds
Uh,
cool.
oh, bro. Okay, they used the derogatory term for Mexican people and almost made me wreck my car, the one that's WB.
You mean
Because
like
it was
just casually, like because that's how
just
everybody talked back in the
casually,
day? Yeah.
and I almost took because you don't hear it. And it was a trail, and that's how they described the trail that led across the Rio Grande. Um, it was two of the officers, and they were waiting by a WB trail, just said like that. And they jumped out. Texas Rangers, don't move. Pow, 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 pow. He's running. I got him. Pow. Ay, ay, ay. That's what the guy said when he was shot. I was like, really? And then we caught them with, I think they called it marijuana I don't know if they called it marijuana or cannabis, but this was like 1936. this radio show was recorded. And it
Sounds
was
like it's
really
3/4 propaganda machine.
uh-huh. Oh, definitely. Because marijuana was not they used marijuana instead of cannabis to make it seem more dastardly because those horrible brown people were bringing it into America to corrupt Americans. And it sounded more Latino marijuana instead of cannabis.
You know, the devil's lettuce.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my goodness. But to listen to that, and then, of course, Dragnet, and then the mysteries, you know what I mean? I can't think any off the top of my head, but they were fun. But Dragnet was the ultimate radio show because of the technology they brought forth. Most of these radio shows only had like two noises, like you and I are talking. And of course, they talk really fast, you know, when they spoke fast. See, let me tell you something. And you'd hear the phone ring, and then you'd hear me pick up. Well, Dragnet would be totally different. I forgot the board, but it had like 5 times as much sound as everyone else. You and I would be talking in a room, and you could hear the clock in the back ticking. You could hear traffic outside the window going by, kids outside playing. Like, that's how layered the sounds were in Dragnet.
Oh,
So,
interesting. I never knew that, like, evolution of that. That's neat.
yeah, Dragnet was really on cutting edge. And then when television came around, they were just, we want Dragnet on television no matter what. Well, Jack Webb was like, well, if we go to television, I'm going to be in it. And so are all the guys that read. Well, the guys look like regular guys. I mean, to take the joke, they had a face for radio. And they were like, we don't care. We're not having a bunch of pretty boys in it. We're going to keep my crew together. We've already been working together for years. And he was able to pull that off. So you had actual detectives that looked like middle-aged white dudes with male pattern baldness. Like, if you watch their shows, nobody's a pretty boy.
Dude, I had no idea about any of that. That's super neat.
Yeah, I fell down that rabbit hole after I started listening to them, and then I wanted to learn more about them. And it was pretty good. And of course, you know, they have a whole museum with the LA, what is it, LA Sheriff's Department, LA Police Department Museum.
Yeah, the LAPD.
Yeah, they have Jack Webb. They had a badge and all that stuff for him because of the recruitment and everything else that came about.
I mean, I've been to that museum now a couple of times, and I really, really enjoy that museum. It's in that police station and everything. It's sort of at the bottom, you know, where Terminator comes out and he's naked and he takes that one guy's jacket in the first Terminator. That's at the observatory, and this is essentially down the street from the observatory from what I remember. So it's not too far from there. If you ever sightseeing or you went to the Hollywood sign, you're going to be close to there. And then it's a great museum. It's just a cool museum. There's not that many guns there, but there are some good guns there. But I would have definitely paid more attention if I would have known all that about Jack Webb and all that. That is pretty neat. And it's the kind of museum where I'm sure they had a pretty good like memorial of that. I just didn't know to look or pause at it, you know.
Yeah, it was really, I fell down the rabbit hole hard because that wasn't Jack Webb's first radio show, obviously. He played a coroner, and they brought in an expert, and that's something also he kind of helped out. He actually brought in LAPD to help write the scripts to make sure they got stuff correct. Like that, he was one of the first ones to bring in subject matter experts to the show. The Shadow, Lamont Cranston. Yeah, that was also good. To listen to some of their fiction was really good, but Dragnet, the radio show, was really good. I did not like Gunsmoke at all.
Oh, really? I don't know if I must have listened to some Gunsmoke, but it's not one of my ones that I go back to or anything.
Like the Dragnet stuff, can definitely go back to it because it was just so interesting. Once I learned about the sound thing, then you could, you know, because the channel, whatever channel it was on Sirius Satellite Radio, it would just have a lineup of different ones. So you would go from radio shows of the 30s to 50s to 60s because people don't realize, yes, radio shows were still out there in the 60s getting done. And you could just hear the richness of, I mean, it was almost like you were watching television. Somebody was watching TV and you were just in the other room. That's how pretty much Dragnet had it.
I mean, it sounds like that, but it's it's written and performed in a way that you never need to look over at the television. Like television
Nah.
could care less, and they actually want you. They'll do stuff where you end up looking at it because of whatever. Like, can you imagine what they did here? Look at this, and you'll look at it.
Hmm.
Where the radio, they know there's no point in that, so they don't. And that's when, like you're saying, it lasted until the 60s. That's probably why, because I mean, they're super cool. You're trying to get work done, and you don't want to be looking at a TV the whole time. Listening to music is nice and everything, but having your mind, especially if you're doing something like yard work or something where you can do it, you
Hmm.
don't need to be thinking about it. If you can listen to something that takes your mind, and driving, same way. If you can listen to something that occupies your mind, that's like a time machine. That can make a 3-hour drive pleasurable,
Fly by.
right? It's like
Fly by. Yeah. So I mean, that's because and it's all because of the firearms journey. My dad allowed me to read my own books after I escaped. I escaped his plan to make me a legible writer, and it just led to firearms in those books. It led to military history and studying military history and special warfare units and the things they did and the equipment they had. I mean, it's a crazy, twisted journey to me becoming a Second Amendment advocate. But then when I arrived here and I see how little some people pay attention to any of this, oh, it doesn't concern me. I live in a free state. Well, a whole lot of people woke up over that free state bullcrap. But it's like, yeah, people who are into it have to just go to everybody. We need to get in this fight. It's about all the rights, man. However you get here. I got here through that wandering means. Kids are getting here today through playing Call of Duty. Cool. Welcome to the club, baby. That's also where I'm working out, trying to get as many guns that look like they come from video games as possible to get that entire generation excited about it that grew up on these games. Like, why not? When you listen to someone who's in their 30s and they finally got into it because they came to my events and they're like, hey, dude, I want the HK shotgun. Who makes that? And I got a kid looking for that. And he's a police officer now, but he has that gun because of video games. He wants to buy it. And that's where he comes in at. And that's not the first or the fifth person I had come up to me that goes to my diversity shoots, started shooting guns there and realized you can shoot these things because they're fun. Like, this is another form of recreation, just like driving cars fast, just like, having a show car, just like getting into watches, just like getting into cigars or bourbons. It can be a hobby, but we have to fight for this hobby because they're trying to ban it and they're using lies to do it. And I need you, young Black guy, young Hispanic guy, Asian woman, to be here and help in this fight. And that's what's really, it's working out, but it's taken a long time.
And the thing is, it's happening without like a blueprint or a recipe or an established trail, right? And it's not happening with some organization that has everyone's ear. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
not happening with anybody that's got everybody's, you know, command or anything, or like even influence. So I think that's a indication of its not just necessity, but like it's, I don't know if importance is the right word, but like it's, it's authority maybe that it comes through in spite of all the challenges that you would think, like there's nothing else that happens that everyone's universally in favor of, kind of thing.
You could definitely say it's something that time has definitely come. I mean, it's crazy how, again, I'll say it myself, second is for everyone, Maj with Black Guns Matter. Um, wow, Phil Smith, and Naga, and Diana Mueller all started our organizations and started our work in February of 2015. That is crazy. I mean, so yes, It's a time. It's something. This time has come, and of course, people were before that, but after that, it just rolled. We got Derek and Kids Safe. We got Sarah and Hold My Guns. We got Walk the Talk America. Like we have these organizations that all popped up, and we've gotten together and gotten into the fight. And it's just the time has come for us to get politically active and start proselytizing, like the Second
I think
Amendment
just,
as another civil right.
well, we're doing that, and it's a matter of flexing it now. There's plenty of people
Hmm.
that do have, because the people you were talking about were doing it without recipes and stuff. But now there are established things, not just the groups that you talked about. But like I'm saying, I think there's others besides what you're talking about that are from the
Hmm.
50s. There's a group that were before that, and I
Yeah,
don't know if it was in this show or last night, because I just did a show last night where I was kind of wandering about this in my head. But I think that we have like a generation. It's not quite generational, but we have like a waves of new organizations, and I think we're due for new organizations, either out of frustration or new ideas or just new people.
yeah, new
And
people, new blood,
capitalize on it. Yeah, we're going to see
new
some,
energy.
and then people stepping down. You saw that Tig said, "I'm done this year." Maj has said a couple of times, "I'm done." Other people have said, they've got a scheduled lifespan of their project, and I don't know if that's just a way of calling your shots, or if it's an understanding of mental health and just understanding that they have a life that they want to live in addition to this, and why not start that out? Understanding, learning from when we say stand on the shoulders of people who came before us, you're standing on the shoulders of people like Ken, who've been open and
Hmm.
transparent with his journey, and well, I don't want to pick on any specific person's life events, but when someone who's young today can look back at um, Aaron Zellman or uh, uh, Chris Neil Knox
Neil Knox,
or
yeah,
the dad, not Jeff or Chris. I was trying to think of their dad's
yeah,
name. It's right
Neil,
in front of me. But
yeah,
the life of Neil Knox, which is already that whole life. Aaron Zellman's their whole life. Their everything, their accomplishments and everything have happened. And then you got Ken, who's still kicking and sharing in a whole different way. Again, a new person coming in and having all these literally as, okay, I understand. Yes, I understand. I understand. They don't have to choose one of these. They can take a version of this and move in their own direction. And that's where they may have said, I'm going to set this up, but just like, when someone goes into career, they go, okay, I'm going to do this, but knowing that there's a divorce rate or whatever, I'm not going to get married until, or I'm going to get married only if, there's some people go into stuff knowing that there's potential issues. And it's, why wouldn't it be the same with a bunch of organizations? They've seen where organizations failed or succeeded, or where they've, if we have 4 organizations or 3 organizations at the national level and they kind of arrange themselves like this, it makes sense that the new organization is going to come in to fill that gap, which I'm not doing very good here, but right? Like they're not going to necessarily lay themselves right here when they could do something here and create, something new. So I think the same with,
yeah. And then you have some dork like me that comes in and we're like, "Hey, I'm just doing this thing." It's like, all right, what's the beginning? What's the end? What's the game plan? I don't know. See you next month. See you again next month.
well,
Oh,
dude, it's not possible. We're not Borg and we're not robots, and we're not possible to know our futures and what's we're able to do, or what, how long. So I don't think it's connotation at all and how we're doing it. Everybody's got their own thing, but the,
yeah.
the thing is trying to pay attention to it all and be aware of it all, and then I
To
guess
me,
just
it was
sharing it.
just it was just crazy starting the same month with all these guys and then looking around going, wait a minute, they had an actual plan. It's like Maj came in and this was a business plan. X number of years was going to be dedicated to it. I mean, Maj and I are actual friends and we've had these conversations. And, this is the goal I want to achieve by now. Diana went in with her goal, and I'm not sure. I think it changed a little bit with the success of having it in each state. And now she's starting up a DC project in every state. That's an offshoot that can actually march on the capital or go to their state capital instead of doing the thing, to to DC, or including traveling to DC. And then, of course, NAGA has blown up, open chapters in every state, and also had their first convention in Atlanta, a month ago? So they're doing their thing. But I was like, I started at the same time, and it was just supposed to be a workshop. And it's necessary to grow it because we're seeing success, and this is the time. But I did not come into this thing with any plan. I definitely didn't come into this thing with a financial plan. But it's working out, and now 8 years deep, it's time to make it real. And that's probably, if you guys have heard it all before, that's probably why I'm nervous, because this has never came as a business venture. It came as something I felt was just necessary, and never looked at any deeper than there's an opening here that nobody's filling, and I think it needs to be done.
Well, there's people that like to bake, right? And they're going to bake for themselves and their family, and they're going to bake and give away it as give stuff away as gifts or something. And people can understand that they're good bakers, and then, they'll show up at picnics and be appreciated and that kind of thing. And then there's people that want to be bakers, or that, are at least open to it, or they're at a point in their career where it's, oh yeah, I guess I could be a baker. I'm okay with that. So then they actually pursue it. And I think the big difference is between the three examples, or the two of the people in the examples you gave, is they've got support. They've got other people, except for Maj, I guess. I don't think he's got a personal assistant, a secretary, and a treasurer and stuff running around.
Maj has a team.
Oh, okay. Well, then they all do. So then there you go. So it's just having a team. You can't do everything that's necessary in all the different aspects of it to do it yourself. So that's what I was going to get at with the baking. You can be a really good baker and be appreciated, and you can be pretty capable as an individual. Clover's at a thing right now, and he baked like a whole bunch of cakes and pies and did a bunch of desserts for a big event, fairly elaborate, right? And he was able to do that with practice and experience and the inclination and the drive to do it, right? But he's only going to ever get as big as he can get. If he really wanted to be a baker, he'd be buying a place, and he'd be getting an accountant mainly, and then funding or whatever, like you're saying, the financial side of it that comes with all that, because that all is necessary, and people see that, and it becomes a big thing. So that's, again, it has to do with either drive, like you wanted to do that ahead of time. But I think also you can just be a good baker or whatever, like, oh, you're doing your thing and have no reason to want to be a baker necessarily. You're, successful at what you're doing. But then somebody comes along and says, experiences one of your pies at an event. Well, that's never going to happen because nobody likes pies, but it experiences one of your cakes at an event and goes, wow, you need to really be, competing with Sarah Lee. Let me put some money behind you. Let me get you whatever the encouragement is, either motivation or money or something else, right? Like, or maybe use my land to do this, or use this resource to get yourself moving, or let me show you how it works behind the scenes so that you don't, or whatever. Let me give you some people to do whatever the thing is. So sometimes I think it's kind of thrust upon people, and then occasionally I'm sure it's just dabble. Oh, wow, this is easy. And then, just follow through. Sometimes it does just work for people. And sometimes if you are filling a demand that there's a thirst for, it will. That's how supply and demand works, right? It just, you fill the demand, you get larger. And again, if you had the opportunity and the drive, sometimes the one comes first, but then the other, if it's available, is right there to meet it, right? And I definitely know a couple of, not those organizations, but organizations that were the wave before that. Actually, now that's kind of interesting. It's a totally different topic. But now that I'm sitting here thinking about the wave, you're talking about 2015 era. And I always have to think visually of my poster that I did, where I kind of did the cartoon series and I arranged them all chronologically from the bottom up. And when I did that, I was trying to figure out how to group them. Since it's not possible to group them by physical location, and it kind of made no sense to do it by physical location, I did it more of kind of eras. It turned into rows, and it kind of lined up. You have the 1968 Gun Control Act, and a bunch of, the Gun Owners of America started, and Second Amendment Foundation started, and JPFO started in reaction to that. The 86, what is it? What is it called?
86, 84.
The 86 Gun Owners Protection Act, but I was going to say the Hughes Amendment part of it,
Okay,
that
yeah.
created a couple organizations. So like when we get kicked in the nuts really hard or when we get a really bad black eye, the result is a bunch of new organizations come out of us. And that's a reactionary thing. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I don't know if it's always reactionary. It's like, there's money to be made in this. When they smack us like that, we could be fighting back. And other people are saying, hey, when they smack us like that, everybody throws money at a pile so we can make money. And there's nothing wrong with that because you need a place, that you need that functionality, but that's not everybody's drive, but it is definitely some people's drive. So anyhow, as I look at in my head, all the different players, there are these like waves or whatever. And some of those waves before you guys in the 15 era, which is internet, not just internet, but high speed YouTube, everybody's aware of whatever's going on. And there's, everybody kind of knows what's happening or at least has the ability to. So y'all are existing in an environment that's, I'm not going to say conductive, but at least it's much more possible to be small and grow. It's not
Yeah.
like it's easy. It's just that it's possible. Back in the day, it was really difficult to be small and grow, just because it was tougher. There was less tools and stuff. But that's the thing: is the organizations that were valid or maybe interesting or useful either did their thing and left, or died. They physically just died as a person. Ended in the organization with them. But some of them were just so persistent, even though they aren't necessary. And we know a couple of them that I won't even talk about them. I'll just talk about how they leech millions of dollars out of the industry and the community every year and do nothing for it, literally nothing, but sometimes just phoning it in enough to
Hmm.
get all the fundraising or whatever it takes to continue to exist. But essentially, they're like those things that hang off the side of a shark that's doing its job, running around eating dead stuff. And these things just, leach off or whatever they're eating off of the poop or something. And, those organizations exist because they're persistent. And again, there's a couple of them that I don't hate, but one of them owes me like $500 and the other one just sucks. It goes around making a bunch of money and just sitting there. And the reason those organizations exist is they're like those, what are those things called? They're not leeches, but you know what I'm talking about. Those things that hang off of sharks and whales and stuff.
Hmm.
They just hang out on some other critter that's doing its job and swimming around and doing all the work, and they just don't let go and survive. Sometimes they're even sucking the blood out of the thing and slowly. Well, they're not always killing it. Sometimes it's a relationship or whatever. But essentially, those organizations exist because they're persistent and they hide. Is I guess what I'm getting at. And you guys are in a situation where that wasn't possible. You couldn't hide on the internet. You were either doing stuff or people got sick of you and left you hanging or exposed you for what you are. There's very few modern, whatever you call, like charlatan, just fluff. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I just
Okay, I
had to
guess it's
figure
not
out
like, go ahead.
what the names of those fish were. They call remora.
Okay. I wouldn't have got that for $1 million. I mean, I've heard of remoras before, but I would have thought that was like a stingray or something. So yeah, I'm all off.
Remora eats the shark scraps in return for parasite removal and such. Yeah, so they hang around on them and eat whatever falls off.
Yeah.
It's creepy looking, but yeah, you're right. There are people like that in this industry, and it is what it is. People call them grifters. I never heard of that term until I got into 2A advocacy. I didn't even know about it because I just wanted to do a thing. You
A
see
grifter is
behind
like
the
the old like roll up into town with the snake oil,
curtain.
right? Like a grifter's like hanging out in front of the state fair, except they're not actually with the state fair. That kind of thing is what I think of them.
Yeah, I mean they're supposedly come in, duck in to make a quick buck and duck out. And the sad part is, I think some people just use this for people they don't like, even though the people have done things in the industry. I've heard it applied to people I know that actually put in work, um, and that's fine.
Oh
There's
yeah,
going to
it's
be
all
better.
perception, right? It's all awareness and perception for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, they don't do as much as I do. Hey, man, look, I am not in a contest with anyone. I'm trying to improve upon myself. I'm trying to be the dumbest dude in the room. Actually, excuse me, no, that's not the way to say it, but I want to be in a room full of people smarter than me and doing better than me to elevate myself. I want to improve on the things I do and help anybody I can, and that's that. I really don't like talking or dealing with the negative part because it just is an energy suck. Why?
And there's no need to, exactly. Like there's so much good stuff happening, you just can ignore it. It's frustrating to know they're there, but every once in a while they probably do something. I know they did one thing ever that I know of, the one I'm thinking of in Colorado, did one
Hmm.
thing ever that nobody else did first. But that's going to be tougher and tougher because anybody can start lawsuits now. Everybody does lawsuits now.
Everybody can get their name put on something now, and that's good
Yeah.
because then people can jump right on it. You're not sitting around waiting for a big name to come through. Oh, who's going to file a lawsuit? No, I can't, and that's great.
And that's the way that we win too, because if we wait around for the big entities to come along and deem it worthy to have the lawsuit, then the other side that's the ping pong. They get to sit and wait until the ball comes back. If they lob one ball towards us and they get 1,700 balls back in their face instead of the one they anticipated 3 weeks from
Hmm.
now, then they quit lobbing balls over at us. So let's stop the ball lobbing.
And that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, hey, big organizations, and I use your example. I'm like, big organizations are like aircraft carriers, man. If they're going to pivot, it's going to take a while. Smaller organizations like speedboats, they can move. They have less of a crew, they have less of a risk, and they can move a heck of a lot faster. So you as an individual, you're the jet ski. You want to hit it and sue them, hit them and sue them. And the thing is, if it's right, especially if you've had a relationship with your state organizations, some of them might actually help with funding, or at least you're in that group and you know the people that are already fighting. So even if the large organization or the state organization isn't behind you, members will be and can help you raise money for these lawsuits, regardless of what their big organization says. Because we've had that happen in Jersey that some were like, oh, let's leave this fight alone. And individuals were like, no, I'm not. I'm going to sue the state. And other people went, hey, this guy's putting in the work. Let's support him. GoFundMe. And they help pay for the lawyers through GoFundMe and other means.
I can't do nothing with a jet ski if they've got a battleship. So how many jet skis does it take to stand in front of the battleship? Like, unless it's going to crush you and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's going to do, whatever, then guess what? It takes one jet ski to stand in front of there to stop a whole entire battleship. And like you said, as
Totally.
soon as there's awareness, so the idea that, oh, we need to get a fancy boat to stop it. I don't know. At one time, maybe, but not anymore. Now there's too many people that are going to see that happen, and they're too concerned that they'd crush the one jet ski. So they're going to stop that boat.
And again, they will bring their own individuals on jet skis, sailboats. I mean, it's a thing. I just saw something. I don't know if you know about it. Is it called the boat lift for 9/11? Have you ever seen that DVD? I mean, that DVD documentary?
What's it called again?
Boat lift for 9/11
I
or
guess
nine
not.
eleven boat lift. Bro. So I looked it up. Yeah, boat lift 9/11. It talks about how. Now, understand where I live. I live in Jersey. I have friends that were in the building. My neighbor were in the building. And this is the first time 22 years later I'm hearing about this. Um, People were stuck on the island. They closed down all the bridges. They closed the subways because it was a terrorist attack. They didn't know what was going on, but they know just several arteries leading off of Manhattan. Well, you got people want to get the frig off the island. And my friend, my gym partner, she was one of them. And because they were supposed to be in one of the towers, they were supposed to be in Merrill Lynch. And they were actually going to Modell's to buy a rowboat to row out of New York City. Well, what happened is there were some boats there, ferries, and the people were piled up 10 deep on the ferry, and the Coast Guard called for a boat lift. And if you look this up on YouTube, 9/11 boat lift, you will actually see a really well put together documentary that talks about how quickly these guys formed up in just pretty much for 12 straight hours, ran people from Manhattan back to Jersey or Connecticut just to get him out of the city. And people were just glad to get out. I didn't know. My neighbor was there. He was stuck and was able to get to the Jersey side, get in his vehicle and come home. But we thought he was gone. So when it comes to little boats getting things done, individuals, these were all ship's captains. And one of the guys said in the thing, he said, if we tried to organize this, if you try to make this some kind of contingency plan, it would have fallen apart. But a call went out and people just helped because that was the right thing to do. And that's what a lot of these lawsuits and Second Amendment advocacy can become. But also be aware that there are organizations that you can join with. And that's why I tell people, even if you can't afford to join an organization, join their newsletter. Get the newsletter because they'll give you information that's happening in your state, in your local area, and what's going on, and worthwhile information. And yeah, they'll be asking you for money. Well, get in line. Everybody asks you for money. you've had people asking and taking money from you since you got your first job. It ain't going to change.
That's capitalism also. So we expect in capitalism to allocate resources to what we value and what we think are strategic or tactically important. And you can either spend your time with those organizations, you can go volunteer with Tony and make a difference by doing something. There's a million ways to do that, from your local ranges to improving the local shared shooting areas, doing a cleanup or something, or all the way up to running for office probably.
Yep. Now, again, look, I'm going to tell you straight up, I am not running for office ever. My wife already had put her foot down. People love to tell you what you should do. No, not happening. But the Second Amendment thing and what I'm doing now, I think it's working, and I'm totally willing and have worked with other organizations like Sarah from Hold My Guns, Walk. Well, no, I didn't work with Walk the Talk America, but I promoted them. What's the other one? Girl in the Gun. Girl in the Gun has come out to my events, and I've had them introduce themselves to people, because it's about building bridges and making connections with people. And when I had Sandra Zetamayor, who heads the what's the name of it? Lehigh Valley Girl in the Gun chapter. All of a sudden, you see this mom who's got kids that has her own business that does work, but she's also this shooter, welcoming females in and helping them. That's creating a bridge, a connection with somebody that me as a guy might not be able to make that connection. It's great they came to my event, but now they see this. There's another female. Not only is another female, it's one that's a ranked shooter nationally. And she's right here in your neighborhood or within driving distance of you. And she just invited you to an event that they host. Because again, I'm not in competition with anyone. My event is a workshop. I don't have memberships. And one of the reasons I don't is because people, again, when it comes to this competition thing, worry about someone poaching their members. And I just avoid that entire scene. Not here to fight for you, against you. I'm here to build us together, stronger, bigger, better, more members.
I don't know if it's exactly the same, but Clover used to, remember Clover? He would back in the old days, he would use the analogy of the brick wall. There's entities out there, the bricks that are doing their thing, being a wall and whatnot, and what holds them together is that mortar. And different people fill different roles, but and then we both, I guess, technically, because we're people and not bricks, but that concept that there are things that are separate entities and they are not going to touch, they're never going to be occupying the same space. People may not even ever cross between them, but there are going to be some people that are aware of both, or that understand both, or that are at least compassionate of both. And you don't have to agree with everybody in freedom and liberty, but as long as they're not bothering you and you ain't bothering them, then who cares what the hell they are doing, really? So, you don't have to agree with everybody, but if everybody can, mutually agree to do some stuff together, that's what it's all about.
Heck yeah. And oh, dude, hold on. Speaking of people not agreeing and being together, that happens at SHOT Show because you have so many people from the industry getting together that you have people that don't get along, but they're at the same parties and at the same events. And it's like, yeah, okay, you can either put on your adult pants and be a grown up and just not say anything to the person you don't get along with, or you can be that pain in the ass that somehow makes everyone uncomfortable because you don't like someone else in the room. And that's going to actually show what kind of person you are more than it's going to affect anyone else. And it is just funny seeing that because I don't talk about most of it, I don't care about most of it, and people don't bring it up to me who's feuding and who's fighting. So I'm totally ignorant of it. So I'll have a conversation with one person and bring up the person who they somehow see as their enemy. And I'm like, get over it. What? Just get over it. Did they hurt you? Did they take money from you? Did they hurt a member of your family? Did they physically attack you? If the answer is none of the above, walk away. So what? You don't like them because they said something on something. Eh, you're a grown ass man or a grown ass woman. They didn't like Jesus, bro. Get over it. Let it go. Because I've heard somebody was talking about me at one event, and I was like, so? Well, yeah, don't you want to know who it is? Nope. Don't even care. Let them talk. And it's not that I'm better than anyone or I'm somehow this Jesuit or, I'm like, no, I have a finite amount of energy, and caring that you like me or don't like me is not going to burn that energy up. Maybe if I drop 100 pounds, get in the gym, I'll have extra energy that I can somehow give a hoot about who actually likes me. But until then, we've got work to do.
So I just dropped a link in the guts of the show here to Foss's mouse party tonight, which is a topicless get together for people
Oh, nice.
that being up in the middle of the night. It's 11 p.m. my time, which will probably make it 1 a.m. East Coast, I believe. No,
Yeah, it's crazy.
no, it's more than that. 9 p.m. is midnight here, so that's 2 a.m. for y'all. So I don't know if we don't get too many people from the East Coast unless they're third shifters, unless they're up all night, insomniacs, or getting stuff done. But anyway, Foss does a show on Saturdays, but before that, Brooke Cheney will be doing the suicide prevention Saturday. She just doesn't have her thing flipped over so that I can link to it. Otherwise, I'd be linking to her show. That's happening in just 3 hours from now. Tonight is pain and suffering. It says sometimes or the lessons that pain and suffering teaches us. Because the growth, because our challenges. Tonight we'll talk about some examples. So Brooke, understands that 2 out of every 3 deaths with a firearm are the result of suicide, always used against us. And the better we can understand that and get more accustomed to approaching it in conversation, the better we'll be with each other, understanding the situation, and hopefully preventing that from happening as much as possible. But in addition, when we have conversations with the other side who are completely ignore that and they're standing on the graves as they point fingers at us, we can better get that point across. Let them go challenge their side, who's feeding them this, this and maybe change in lots of different ways. So I think Brooke's got, I would say honestly, the best project going. There's lots of fun stuff about rights and on our property, and there's lots of stuff like what Diana's doing that's big, and it's getting bigger and it's critical and important. But all we have is Walk the Talk America, and we do have some military organizations and affiliated things that are focused on suicide prevention and mental health awareness. But for the most part, it's still one of our largest untapped opportunities, not just to affect the lives of people who might be in stress and to normalize mental health. We talk about broken arms. We tried ourselves if we get stabbed with a knife or something and we're healing up, or we got a scar. I got this wicked scar on my arm from battling 3 giant pit bulls the other day. And I don't have any problem showing you that, but I'm not going to tell you about, what would make me cry or whatever. And what's up with that? That's lame, right? So, normalizing mental health awareness allows us to go, hey, man, that thing's bleeding, or that looks infected. Like, hey, what did you just say? Like, let's talk after the show and, chat a bit. What's going on in your world? Like we're willing to offer examples of how to get rid of the heartburn after eating barbecue. But, you get back from a trip and 6 different things went sideways and you're in some kind of aftershock. Like, how often do we ask our allies and family and friends for, help with that? Or, do we even know? Now, the kids do that. Honestly, you probably are around it more than I, but when I see the kids talking or, just some of the words that are used and the way they approach things, either from being in therapy constantly or from being around people who are constantly in it, or maybe the TV shows talk about it more, but they seem to have a more, what's the word, like awareness of, what causes stress, or, how to deal with stress or when to take a break and stuff. Maybe it's just from being a kid or being closer to being a kid. They get put in times out and stuff from their parents or whatever, but it seems like the younger kids do have, and I say younger kids, I'm thinking people I'm dealing with in the 20s or whatever, they seem to have a bit more comfortableness and a bit more awareness about this whole thing, but certainly not again where it's normalized. Is that the right word? Or understood to where, again, we see an actual decrease in the number of suicides that are out there. That would be one of the goals, the big goal. And then, of course, the idea that we work together. There's opportunities for us to work together. There's plenty of them, but this is an important one. This is a valid one. When suicide deaths go down, as we accomplish this, as we normalize mental health awareness and remove some of the stigmas and traditions and glitches that bring people to this kind of situation, and we solve that, that's not going to go unnoticed. There's nothing we do that goes unnoticed. And that is a massive gain for our side, not just in the saving of people who are our allies and our brothers and sisters, right? And people that have massive world knowledge and skills. But it's also doing something united, again, without an instruction booklet, without any organization other than Brooke and Mike and Jake, and then a couple other people, right? Like that are putting any effort into this. I don't want to dismiss the hundreds of organizations on the military side. I just really haven't had an opportunity to dig into that. I don't want to dismiss them because there's a bunch of them that I'm seeing the blanket lifted, to see them all. But those are the ones that we know in our realm. And it's relatively few is all I'm saying, compared to the number of people that shoot 9mm, that choose to shoot 9mm. There's very few people that are paying attention to this. So I think Brooke's effort is literally, I guess that's what I was going after, is that Brooke's consistent show each Saturday is definitely one of the most important, one of the most valid, one of the most useful projects that are out there. Right now, she has 307 subscribers. I'm going to challenge everybody that's out there to take a moment to grab her. Let me go over and screen share, or I can just do this in front of this screen, I guess. And I'll just drag this up over here. I'm going to challenge you to go to her channel. I think you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to copy the title of her video and paste it over here so y'all can see the result of this. And I'll paste it. I'll hit enter a few times, and then I'll hit an equal sign. And then I'll take the URL up there and copy that and paste it. And then now it's in a post over on the comments on this video. I'm going to challenge you to take that and share it. Post it on your YouTube, post it on your Twitter or whatever it's called, post it on your Instagram, the other platforms that you might use. Why didn't my link go through? So I'll try sending the link again. I'm distracted and I must have done something to break that link. But share Brooke's project. This is something that's valid. When she reaches the 1,000 subscriber mark, her channel will unlock, or the YouTube will unlock opportunities for her channel that she deserves to be able to take part in. And again, there's opportunities for us to work together, and this is one of them. Why won't it let me link? It's being stubborn. I wonder why it won't let me link.
100%. I 100% agree. I used to do it more, and now I think I'm going to have to actually set something so I remember to do it weekly. What I would do was spread word about other people that I know that was putting in work. All right, there it is. Other people that were putting in work in the 2A and freedom community. Cost you $0 to promote them. Hell, hardly anybody sees my channel anyway. I mean, my Instagram anyway, because I violate so many of their community standards. Meanwhile, over 50% of the people that just saw my last post are not followers of mine. So I have no idea how I'm on, some kind of IG timeout when 50% of the people that see something are non-followers. But anyway, using our social media to promote and as our own algorithm, I think is really important for us to utilize. I mean, just the people in this room right here can go and spread it. Somebody will pick it up. Some other people will see it. Why not utilize that? We have that effort. We have that ability. And I haven't been doing it as much as I used to. I also don't go on Facebook and do that stuff as much as I used to. I just have the automatic share set up, and I got to change that up.
I'm gonna disagree with you because I hate Facebook, and that's all I do too. Is I have things tipped your
Share.
way, copied to Facebook, and that's I'm gonna do it this way: get copied to Facebook, and that's all they'll get because I don't like Facebook. There's probably some technical strategy to not do that, but I figure it's easy enough. It's free to do that, but I acknowledge that some people would challenge me on that, I guess.
Well, what I used to do was, the different, what do you call them, Facebook groups. The different Facebook groups I would be able to share my message and go into, but now it's like, let us share the Facebook on its own. Leave me alone.
But let me go back to what you were saying there, and I want to throw another analogy out there that, when people practice their, let's say, rifle skills, right? Like, are you honestly practicing rifle skills because you think you're Grizzly Adams or like the Little House on the Prairie? You're going to be by yourself in the middle of nowhere defending, 360 degrees, all comers? Probably not. You probably think you're going to assemble to be part of a community resistance against whatever Red Dawn type of thing might be, and you're considering, or the Jericho thing, or the whatever your perception is of what might happen. You're probably not standing alone. You're probably standing with whatever your dream is, your fantasy. I don't know what I want to say, like people are dreaming about, you know what I mean? Like whatever your theory is that you're probably going to have neighbors or allies or something. And it's the same with, I would say it's the same digitally. We take alone, we're useless. We're essentially blades of grass with offering no resistance at all. Together, we become that bundle of sticks that acts as a timber, has actual threat to the adversary or whatever. So if we practice our individual skills so that we know that we're going to, when needed, act together to be useful as a group, as a team, or whatever, right? As a group, I guess, then, or at least together, capable people in a group are more of a concern than just individuals, no matter how capable they are, right? And the same with the internet. We can either stand there as a bunch of people watching what's going on, or realize that the internet is ours to play with. There's buttons on the internet. It's not a television with a remote control. There's a whole keyboard of buttons you can play with, and that interacts with these logarithms we always talk about. We're not at the mercy of logarithms. Logarithms are just like the hours of operation at the range. Are you at the mercy of the hours of operation at the range, or you just work your range time in when it's, when they're open? You just deal with it. It's a parameter of the situation. So we know that the internet uses things like social platforms, YouTube, and whatever you like, Instagram or whatever. And those are going to have rules, and they're going to have mechanisms. You can either consider yourself at the mercy of those, like I'm at the mercy of the bus, or you can figure out the bus schedule and ride the bus. Like you figure out how it works and you use it. So how do you, how does that equate into actually doing something? You go over and take that link for Brooke, and you post that everywhere. You make a consistent effort to bring Brooke to 1,000 subs as fast as possible, and you champion that until it happens. And then what do? Then you go find somebody else who's worthy of that effort, and you do it again. It exercises your skills at just literally copying and pasting, which is, reloading and, making sure your mechanism works, that you're going to be capable when you're needed for really an onslaught or defense against an attack. But then it also exercises your use on the internet. Are you a single person on the internet, or are you a part of a community? If you're a part of a group of people that meet to talk about the weather, you're a group of people that you meet and talk about what happened at work. You got a group of people that you talk about, your dogs or your cats or your fish or something. You got a group of people you talk about church or school, or you got a group of people that have something in common with a hobby or a family member's hobby or whatever it is, right? You've got these different realms out there. Oh, I'm not a big enough person in the YouTube. Who gives a shit? Like, are you a person? Are you human in this world? Like, you got all kinds of stuff you can do, and you can take these conversations to real life. You can do things to bring those back to digital, but you can exercise these aspects, these skill sets. Can you reload good? I don't know. Can you reload a revolver good? I don't know. Can you reload a shotgun good? At some point you go, these are important to me and these aren't. I'm just asking you to think about that digitally. And how do you figure that out? If you haven't experienced this stuff, well, go promote the shit out of Brooke Cheney and her Suicide Prevention Saturday show. Bring her to 1,000 subscribers as fast as possible. Take pride in the fact that you were able to help do that, and do it again, and do that until when that's just something you can do. Did you get a revolver and know how to load it as fast as possible? Did you get a reloader and know how to not swing the gate closed and ruin it? Like, did you know how the sights worked immediately? No, you fiddled with it until you figured all that stuff out. And then it's second nature to you. So when we're asking people to help somebody get to 1,000 subs, honestly, in 2023, shouldn't that be second nature to people who can fiddle out, how to go find a movie anywhere they want it, or figure out how to go buy something off of some website as fast as they want? We're pretty competent. Let's be competent in the things that are, I don't want to say trifles, but the things that seem like nothing, but it's all nothing. And if we can do nothing casually, whenever we want to, when we need to, we'll be freaking samurais at it, right? We'll be freaking ninjas. And that's why I'm urging people to do some of this stuff. Take opportunity to do this. Find something else. I'm talking about Brooke Cheney because I find that to be something that's useful. And again, probably one of the most useful things, topics that we can be dealing with. But there's certainly others. There's whole regions of, think about, I don't want to bring too many things up. People get mad at me. But there's whole regions. Let's go with Spanish speaking. I don't think anybody get mad at me for that. I'm in Arizona. Spanish speaking is essentially second nature because I'm so close to an international border with a country that speaks a different language, right? So it's just something like, if you live next to Canada, there'd be people that speak French and stuff, but there's a lot of people in the United States that speak Spanish. Where's the Second Amendment advocacy in Spanish, except for Edgar? And I don't want to disregard the people at Second Amendment Foundation that speak fluently in Spanish, and the people at Going Over America that speak Spanish fluently. But aside from them occasionally being on Telemundo, and Edgar doing stuff. Well, I guess I a little bit, but Edgar doing stuff fairly regularly, even in Mexico. There's almost nothing. And I guess, if we want to start naming off everybody we know who is of whatever, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, we know that there's very few efforts and nothing large in that realm. That's ridiculous. We got tons of people that come in that speak some kind of Latin language, and we should be able to accommodate them so that they don't get abused and exploited for, essentially, the other side is often the side that says, oh, we care about blah, 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 and blah, 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 and we'll just speak for them. We care so much about them, we'll just speak for them. Well, how about letting them speak for themselves already?
Exactly. They have their own agency. Now, because I live here in Jersey, I have a lot of Latinos that come to my events, and they have friends that reach out. And I think that's awesome. But to have a dedicated Latino Second Amendment organization, hey, I'm down. Like, I got the fellas that from Egypt that come to my event, and because they come to my event, they've reached out to others. I got my Sikh brothers that come to my events, and they've reached out to other Sikhs. I have Muslims, I have Jews that came, and they want to start their own. I'm like, look, bro, this is my workshop. I am not in competition with anyone. If this is a place where you want to gather like-minded, like race, like gendered, like whatever, people in whatever circle you consider yourself in or whatever category, do it. The more people we can reach, the better. And yes, there's openings. As you say, there's spaces, there's gaps, and they can be filled. I don't consider that competition because my goal is to bring well, hell, the second is for everyone. I can't be more clear than that. I am not competing against these people, and I welcome all people to my events because we have to have a starting point. We have to have a place of germination, just like growing a plant and a flower in a bed. You know what I mean? You just don't chuck a seed in the ground. You actually grow and then transplant. So yeah, come to my events. Use that as a place you grow as a 2A advocate, where that you meet other people in the circle, that you meet other people in the firearms and advocacy community. We've had Hungarians in our class, and I'm like, great. She's been there. She brought her son, who I think he's in his teens, brought her kid. Bring others. It to me, it's about growing. Come to my place.
I'm always concerned in an international event like you're hosting, right, like that if you bring a bunch of people from Hungary together with a bunch of people from Turkey, that could be horrific.
Oh, well, listen, as long as they take that shit outside.
Because they're hungry and they're going to be eating the turkey.
Oh, wow. I thought, you know what I was thinking? Armenians and Turks, but that's a whole different
I didn't even think of the political. I was just thinking of eating a turkey, seeing them as a turkey.
Hungry. And nobody's from Hamburg, Germany, are they? All right, cool.
Snap. There I should have said Hamburg because I don't think there's any live there.
Anyone from the Salisbury Islands? All right, great. My whole thing is use my platform to grow yours. And you're right. I think I might talk about this at the next one because we're at the Union Hill Gun Club on the 21st. And I've had Egyptians, I have Sikhs all in one thing, which is hilarious because I make jokes from jump. When they all walk in, I'm like, oh, great. Get ready for Ruby Ridge, too. We got way too many of the minorities together in one room. But it is fun, man. It is fun. We have the thing. We can bring people together. We're the good guys, dude. We're the guys that have fun. We take you to the range. You shoot guns. And then you can talk about the rights and not get too boring. We can eat pizza. Then we can go outside and smoke cigars. It's not just a whole bunch of Karens running around saying no to freedom. This is a people that we can get here and we can talk about the actual history of this country and how we've grown from where we were and how we can't let it slide back. And one of the guarantees that stops it from sliding back is the ability to physically resist. So anyway, that's what I base all of my stuff on. Well, we're going on what? We just went over 2 hours?
Yeah, I've been letting it go on too many tangents. So that's what happens without Clover here. We can talk without hearing about shotguns and 22s all the time. And start talking about stuff. I've had these last cards out here, and I don't have a card because it's newer than when I made this deck in 2018. But I don't know, one of these days I might go and add to it or whatever. There are quite a few books since 2018. But Concealed Carry Revolution is Professor Yamane's first paperback, his first publication that's focused on, like it says, concealed carry. His whole thing is gun culture 2.0, and he's done some projects. He's a professor of sociology at some college. So he took some classes on guns, and he shares that. So I don't have a card for his, but that was one of the cards or one of the books in the poll right now. But then there's also The Gun Rights War, which is a compilation of Neil Knox's articles that was put together by his son, Chris Knox. And it's pretty thick. Well, it's right here. It's a pretty thick book, and it's a great book. I've actually got the okay to read off of this one. So I've read from this one quite a bit, and I'll start doing that again. I usually do that if I'm sick or something and I've got to lay in bed and I'm bored. I'll read and just record it so that, I'll do a chapter or something that way if I can speak. If I've got a bad cough or something, I can't do it. But anyhow, so that's one of the books in the list. So we've got Concealed Carry Revolution. We've got The Gun Rights War. This one is Neil Knox was a prolific writer in periodicals, so Shotgun News and some other magazines. And this is a compilation of a bunch of different magazine articles or magazine editorials, really. So they're fairly, some of them are fairly short, just a few paragraphs, and then others are maybe a whole side of a page or a whole side of a page and a quarter of the next page. So they're not very long, and there's no narrative other than some forewords and some, occasionally an article will have like a part two or a follow-up or articles that kind of related to each other. But otherwise it's just kind of compiled in an arrangement of general topics and kind of chronologically, but not really. And super interesting to just pick up and read. Neil Knox had a great, he was one of the people that created the ILA, the whole political wing of the NRA. And he was an activist like few others. I don't know if there are any others. I haven't really thought about ranking them before, but he'd be at the top 3 of the list, even with the national organization founders. Have done more than they did because of what his legacy has left behind. So a great book and written by his kids. Then Ken Blanchard, Marine, CIA, started being an advocate for guns in the 90s. When I started online, he was already here doing stuff. He'd been going to SHOT Show and hanging out with Rick Ector and other people at the national level, creating awareness for guns before that was a thing, writing books about the concept to normalize gun ownership at a time when concealed carry wasn't even a thing yet. So this is the rewrite. We talked about his first one, the original Black Man with a Gun. I know I talked to him. There's an interview somewhere where I bugged him about like, dude, I got to ask you, why is that flag fucking backwards? And then I didn't say fucking backwards to Ken, obviously, but why is that flag backwards? And he told me how he, the story of it or whatever. But that's one of the reasons he wanted to get the new book, is because he wasn't super satisfied with that picture, but he couldn't do nothing about it once it was published, type of thing. But so that's the second book, Black Man with a Gun. I don't know, how would you describe that book or Ken's book? It was, I guess it's updated in 14, but it's essentially the 1997 or whatever book. And again, it's sort of, well, I'd consider it advocacy before there was, or normalization before there was like advocacy was a thing. This was like Paxton Quigley wrote a book like, we should be allowed to defend ourselves. And then Ken was like, here, I'm not like Rambo, but I'm CIA and a Marine. So I think he's a Marine, right? Am I mixing?
Yes.
So,
cool.
But he's not running around like with, Marine stuff on and a tattoo out or nothing. He's just like, I've been there and I've done some stuff. So let me, not so much like gun safety, but like gun normalization is what I would call it. And like understanding for like a person who's wearing a suit like he's wearing, right? Like it's not an in your face or anything. He's a reverend, for crying out loud. I would call it a normalization effort, but I don't know. How would you describe?
Well, that's what I look at it as, Ken, and that cost him his actual congregation. People don't understand what it cost Ken to do what he did. He lost his church over that.
Because of the perception of gun ownership at the time and his stance that gunners are normal and not like my rights, my property, but like guns are normal, leave us alone. And they were like, how about you leave? It's going to look better if you leave.
Mm-hmm. And this was in Washington. His church was in Washington, D.C. And they somehow, because again, and this is their minister, and he was telling them, this is your right, and they're tricking you out of your right. And they fell for the okie doke because the stupid is strong in D.C. I'll go ahead and put it out there. You've allowed yourself to be manipulated by people who created the situation you're standing in. And somehow you still look to those people to lead you out of it. And Ken was trying to get them to think on their own. And nothing makes people hate you more than if you make them think. And it's that simple. When you make people question,
them up and go, hey, wait a minute, what you're doing, think about it for a minute. Then they start getting really pissed often.
Well, when you make people question what they consider their base, the thing that they identify as, and you go, yeah, those people that you thought were on your side, well, think about this. And now they have to strike out at someone, and it's not going to be the people they worshiped or looked up to, and it's definitely not going to be them. So it's obviously your fault. And Ken paid for that. For a while, Ken was working as an armed security guard. And I was speaking to him prior to him interviewing me on the show. And I was like, how does it go from Marine Security Forces, CIA, Reverend with your own flock, to work in armed security at a checkpoint? And he was like, you stay humble. God has a way of keeping you that way. And that's all he had to say about it, man. And to me, I understand why he's one of my heroes in this fight. And I look up to him, and he's been around for 30 years.
And not the thing on the side of the shark. He's the shark. Like he's been around because he's been there and done that. And he's, what's the word? Like he's prioritized, and at least from as far as I know, and obviously I can't speak for him, but it seems as though he's done it with, I don't want to say a plan, but he's understood when to step away and to live his life, to do stuff, and he's still here. So many other people burn out, burn bridges, whatever, and they're not here. They might be alive, but they're not in our fight anymore.
And he's the one that told me that. He's the one that told me that. Step away. Your family's important. Your livelihood's important. This Second Amendment fight is always going to be here. And, dude, because sometimes, look, you and I, we do podcasts, we do shows. You have done so much because you're one of the guys I looked up to. You're one of the reasons I'm here, doing this thing, because I know how much one dude with a passion can make a difference. But sometimes you don't see the effect you have on others. Ken wasn't seeing that. Other stuff had happened. Other black guys with guns showed up in the Second Amendment and freedom space, a lot of them actually. And people know their names better. Coleon Noir now. Way more people know Coleon Noir than understand that black man with a gun and Reverend Ken Blanchard was the shoulders that he's standing on. People know Maj Toure, Kevin Dixie. And Ken just had a feeling that he was forgotten. And dude, when he showed up at 2019 speech outside the Capitol, and all of us, at least that's what I noticed, like a lot of the 2A black people that are in it all swarmed around him like a rock star walked into the lawn. And we just couldn't say thank you enough, man. And he was like, I just didn't realize, you know what I mean? Like how people felt about me. And it's like, dude, you're one of the reasons we're here, especially as, black guys in Washington, D.C., at a Second Amendment rally in this fight that you've been in since 91?
Well, and that's just when he started publishing the book or whatever. But yeah, doing stuff. Well, and then in the CIA, and he was an instructor. He was a firearms instructor. So he's definitely been as game as you can be, other than starting an organization. He's done as much legwork, like been in the game as possible since. Let's
not forget, he started the 10th Cavalry Gun Club too. He started the Black Gun Club back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, okay. I don't know about that. So that's something I didn't know about.
Oh, yeah. He formed those. And, they went their own way and branched off and did their own thing. But, yeah, he was a founding member of that stuff. So he's been around on a whole bunch of different levels. And I think sometimes we don't appreciate where we came from. And I think we need to, especially when the guys are still here.
For sure. Well, especially, like you say, while people are still around to hear it. So I wanted to chime in on what you relayed there. Value your voice. I say it all the time, and there's lots of ways you can do that. And one of them is there's a human being on the other side of this. So sometimes it's an individual like me and Tony, and other times it's Ken or somebody, or else it's, the secretary or the PR person. But there is a human on the other side. And very few things that we're dealing with in gun stuff is going to be a robot or a third party even. It's going to be somebody from the company, somebody that's got the ear of the person you're trying to get to. And a kind word is not required, and it's not necessary, but sometimes you never know what weight that'll bring, or what do you call that? Like what relief or awareness or the thing you need at the time. There's decisions being made constantly, right? Like what happened to the car? Like, what happened to the name any issue that can cause stress on what a project person's doing, no matter what the project is, what scale. And when those different tensions or stressors pull from different directions, a word or two or a consistent word is enough to let someone know how to prioritize, what's important, what they're going to do next. And, one of the frustrations is the cycle, who you are, depending on who I'm talking to right now, how long you've been around, how many people you've seen come and go. Do you have influence on that? To some extent, we all have, right? And what we do and don't do, especially on the internet, where we have, look at all these buttons we got. Every single one of these buttons lets us mess with what's going on the other side of that internet. And if you don't do stuff, that's another silent night of no recognition from that project, and you've got stressors pulling you in other directions. And everybody's different, and all times go on. And a thank you today, sometimes that lasts a lifetime. Other times it needs to be said once in a while. Is one person going to say thank you for everybody? Or is one person saying thank you 100 times the same as 100 people saying thank you? I'm just putting that out there. Value your voice means a lot, right? You can do that. You have a lot of power with what you do or don't do on the internet.
It is. It's crazy because every now and again somebody will say they appreciate the work, that I put in, and out of the blue. And I think that's awesome, and I really appreciate it. And I try to say thank you every time I see it. Because, dude, some days, man, I have a regular job too, you know what I mean? I have a regular thankless job.
Yeah, I hear you. I just barely started doing a project that's consistent enough. I wouldn't call it a job, but it's consistent enough to demand, what's the word? To like demand attention. And yeah, there's always going to be something that's like, well, what should I do today? Or what should I do with my free time today, I guess is what I say. Okay, so the last one that people can vote on is Grandpa Jack. And there's a bunch of these. It's kind of like Schoolhouse Rock. If Schoolhouse Rock was written by a rabbi and it was, 22-page pamphlets that were handed out at gun shows. So very inexpensive printing and, plenty of them. Again, people would buy them by the stack or get them from JPFO. I don't really know how it went, but I know that I'd see them in piles at gun shows. So every once in a while, somebody'd pick one up and then you'd put it down, because you weren't keeping it. It was just you're looking at it, and then somebody else would pick it up and put it down. There'd be one by the snack bar, they'd just be around. And I'm sure some people took them home or whatever. But they, like the front, it says, Grandpa Jack, what are you doing? And then, well, I guess I can't even read it, but essentially he's wiping down an AR-15, and he's probably about to teach them something about, like, don't give up your guns because, bad shit can happen, and a lot of people want to ignore that. And he essentially, just kind of in your face, raw gun control kills, essentially. And that's what it's called, gun control kills kids. Essentially, it's probably, actually, I'd have to go get it. It would be interesting. Maybe I'll do that later on today, is go grab some old Grandpa Jacks and read them. But I wonder what this one is. It's been so long since I've read it or looked at it, because I'm sure I didn't read it. I'd probably thumb through it once just to look at it. But it might be about the lethal consequences of ignorance about gun mechanisms. So if you restrict kids from learning about guns at all, that means you're not teaching them how to stay away from guns, and you're not teaching them how to not touch a gun, and you're not teaching them how to tell an adult that you found a gun. If you consider ignorance the solution, then you have accidents, right? So this might be something to that angle, or it might be something to the angle of if you remove guns from kids, then you get atrocities because they were in your face. All right, so those are the four options. If people wanted to vote on them, I just figured since I was playing with the deck, I might as well pull these out and kind of focus on them. So we're 2.5 hours in. I know Tony's got other things he needs to do with his life, but appreciate everybody joining us. If you're listening to this as a podcast, we appreciate you participating in whatever it is out there, wherever the platform is you're listening to it, because we put it out to all the different podcast platforms, giving us a thumbs up or a like or a comment, or how the platforms logarithms determine who gets recommended to more people, and that's how we grow as a podcast. That's how Tony's channels work, and that's how everything works. So we do appreciate the people that interact that way. Now, if you want to interact financially as a capitalist and make it possible for us to do more of what we do comfortably and more often, Tony and I both have opportunities for that. Tony's is, I'll go first, and then I'll let Tony wrap up the show with his upcoming event and how you can support him financially. But we've got Patreons down at the bottom of the screen down there. It's a scroll that's been going by. It says our Patreons make it possible for us to spend time on projects like this one. Thank you. And that's how it is. We have subscribers, people that most of them are buying us a cup of coffee. Thank you very much. I'm actually drinking coconut water with a splash of lime juice in it, like that song always told you to drink, and it actually is really good. But thank you to the people that drop $5 a month on us, and then some people, a couple of people, it's very few actually at this point, are dropping $20 a month on us, and it's essentially buying me lunch once a month. Well, that accumulates, and it pays for the servers, and it pays for the software, essentially, and that lets me spend time on these projects. If we had more Patreons, if I had doubled the Patreons, it would be more of a decision. I wouldn't have to think about spending 10 hours a day doing stuff to pay the bills, because Patreon would pay a chunk of the bills, right? Right now it's paying for all the servers and all the software, and it's awesome. It's literally a whole network of dozens and dozens and essentially eventually hundreds, I should say, of websites to come back online once I can have time to do all that. But it's not priority. We keep the important sites online, like gun calendars, this one, Ask Gun Questions. But it also gives us the time to spend on this and some of the behind the scenes stuff I try to do. And we appreciate that. So that's how we're able to do what we do without having a commercial. I'm not selling this deck of cards. I mentioned if you do want to buy any of these books, I have done Amazon reviews of them. So go check those out. Buy these books off of our Amazon link. Tony, do you got an Amazon link?
Nope, but that's a thing that will be happening.
Yeah, hopefully Tony will get one hooked up sooner than later. But, that's like, 5%. No, it's like 2% on books, I think. So it's, a couple of cents on a book. But again, that accumulates. So we appreciate the people that participate in our version of capitalism, how we're able to make this time to make this stuff happen. And stuff like this deck of cards. This was done on Adobe Publisher, I think, or maybe Illustrator. I honestly don't remember what I was using back then. But I used an Adobe software to create the layout and create the system, and then to dig in. I didn't do this quietly off air. Every single thing I do like this is on air, live, usually with a bunch of people hanging out and having a conversation. And together we discover the books that are necessary to have in a collection like this, and then go through the effort of putting them all into the software to do it, and along the way trying to show people how to use that software. So if you want to accomplish something like this, you just do it. You buy the software or use some free version of the software and do it, right? And make it. It's just clicking buttons and doing it over and over again until it's old habit, right? But these kind of projects is what our Patreons allow us to do. And back in the day, we had about 3 times the Patreons we have now. I'm trying to think, maybe not even that many. And it literally allowed me to drive around the country. And I mean, I didn't do it well. I did go into debt doing it, but literally allowed me to drive around the country, attending pretty much all of our firearms museums, maybe minus a few on the very East Coast, 300 something gun shops, firearms events, pretty much all of them I've attended at least once, national level that existed back in 2018. Obviously, I haven't been traveling in a while, but that's all possible. Those kind of projects they're not lucrative for somebody selling a grip angle or a red dot plate. So nobody sponsors my stuff. So we do appreciate those Patreons. That being said, Tony doesn't use the Patreon so much, but he's got ways that you can support him too. And he's doing more boots on the ground effort than I'm doing. So we'll wrap the show up with Tony. And thanks again for joining us, and take as much time as you want.
Yeah, man, thanks. You guys want to reach out to me? Just reach out to me on my Instagram at Simon Says Train, or Simon Says Train on Facebook. Second is for everyone on Facebook. Second for everyone on Twitter. Just reach out to me directly. I'll send you a link to both PayPal. I'll send you a link to Cash App. I'll send you a link to any of the ways we do it. What is it? Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. Those are the 3 ways we're rocking now because Patreon got weird. Anyway, we have an event coming up on the 21st of September. And then we're going to be banging them out every 2 weeks again right after that. I took this month off mainly because I was burning my guys out, and I kind of built in a respite in the month of September, but we're about to kick it off and we're ending the year just running shows, running events. And please help if you can. If you want to support someone that's supporting us, go to ammolab.com. They are our ammo sponsor. They never asked for anything. They didn't even ask for us to mention it. I'm doing this because I think it's the right thing to do. Support those that actually support 2A advocacy. And they didn't ask for a darn thing. So Ammo Lab, check it out. Check their prices out. And if they come across as somebody you want to do business with, please do business with them. Again, we're going to be at Union Hill Gun Club on the 21st. And then we're going to be at Gun for Hire Range October 5th. And at the end of the month, we're going to be at Recoil Range. So we're going to be around. Can't wait to see you. And that's it. Oh, don't forget to share other 2A or freedom-minded people's accounts on your social media. Thanks a lot.
Right on. Thanks again, everybody. We'll throw a quick commercial out here for our store.
Oh, hold on real quick.
Yeah.
Guess who we're going to have on? What's his name? Jordan from JSD Supply, JSD. The guy, Polymer 80. Well, he has a new optics company called Gideon, and we're going to have him on the Firearms Radio Network Gun and Gear Review podcast on Tuesday, talking about his new company and the optics they have out. They have red dots out for handguns now. They have like 3 or 4 different ones, and he's going to be on our show Tuesday talking about them, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Firearms Radio Network's Gun and Gear Review podcast right here on YouTube.
Right on. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up before we ended it. I should probably mention Clover's podcast. You know, he does the second season or second half of the season. He's in the midst of that, and I'm trying to remember who he's got lined up because I think he already posted them. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I'm crazy. So he may not have posted them. He said something about having to shuffle scheduling with people. So we'll go to the other side of Clover is Ghost, and he'll have a chat coming up on Tuesday night talking about TriggerCon. What's your opinion? Well, I guess I'm rambling here, but what's your opinion of TriggerCon? Would you go? What's the scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I'd go. It's smaller, right? It's in Washington State or Oregon?
Used to be. Now it moved to Kansas, but it's bigger than it was, but it's small. But now it's in Kansas, and it's getting bigger. This is the second year in Kansas.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd definitely go because I want to get out to Kansas anyway. So I'd combine things. Plus, CZ is in Kansas.
Oh, I didn't know that. I would assume. I mean, maybe I know that, and I didn't realize. But I'm not soaking it in. But I would assume CZ. I would have bet on being East Coast someplace.
Yep, CZ's in Kansas City. And, you know, because of the Midwest tour that we were trying to put together, we actually had a range in Kansas. So my whole thing would be, TriggerCon would be pretty much me shaking hands, pressing flesh, and planting the idea that we'd have a 2024 week of diversity shoots. And I want those companies that came to TriggerCon to be at those. or I'd plan it so it could be this weekend, you know, in 2024. So we'd have firearms manufacturers there that can actually come to the diversity shoot. Like, just combine it in some way.
It would certainly attract people, right? It would make it a whole other layer or a whole other.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm going to throw a commercial up, and then we will end it. Thanks again, everybody who's joining us. Or if you're in the future, leave us a comment. Go say hey to Tony while they're on his podcasts. And we'll be back next week with an actual Ask Gun question. So feel free to go over there and actually ask questions again. Ask questions. We'll actually answer them again next week.
AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007. And since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions. GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.